of an ancient tomb.
Holding horrors in every room.
Ghastly ghouls, poison galore. But in the shadows lurks something more. Nights of death and abominations. Cleaning your bits for new creations.
And if by chance you should survive,
There's plenty of sweet loot inside. Curse of Naxxramas, a Hearthstone adventure.
Greetings everyone, and welcome to another week of this, History of Hearthstone. I was going to call it This History of Hearthstone. My name is Frodan. I am your host for this week. I am also going to be joined by Falcone. You guys may know him from casting Dream Hacks, Star Ladder, and a bunch of other Hearthstone events around town, all the way from the UK. Thanks for joining us last second here, Falcone.
I am really excited to be here, Frodan. My first chance to cast with you, and also my first chance to ever cast the Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes meta, as I wasn't casting back then, though I was avidly playing Hearthstone. So I'm looking forward to reliving some of the great moments and some of the nightmares from the past.
That's right. Let's go ahead and break down how History of Hearthstone works for anybody who may be tuning in for the very first time, whether online or through VOD. Every week, we progressively add expansions based off of what you see on the screen. So the first week, we're going to start off with Classic, Basic, and the Hall of Fame. This is week 2, so we're going to add in Curse of Naxxramas, the very first Hearthstone expansion, or it was technically an adventure, but we also added Goblins and Gnomes, the official first full-fledged expansion. Then in week 3, we go to Blackrock Mountain in the Grand Tournament, where Patron Warrior and Secret Paladin will make its first appearance. Then we add the real thickness, which is the League of Explorers, One-Eyed Karazhan, which is the Old Gods, and so on and so forth, all the way leading up to the finals, which will be all cards essentially in the wild format that currently exists right now. And after week 5, the top 4 ranked players of the original 8 that are in the current league will be moving on to the regular finals. And then we'll play that finals through an actual GSO group stage that you guys are familiar with at HCT that you guys see at the champion. All matches are best of 5 conquests with 1 ban. And we'll have each player play 1 match this week. And we got a lot of great players featured here on History of Hearthstone.
Yeah, look at that. Jackie versus Neriah to kick off the day, and just so many big games in such a reminiscent tournament, I suppose. And Dane, JustSayin versus Orange, and then Sixo versus Zalay. There are a lot of big matches to look forward to.
That's right. So we're going to start things off with Jackie versus Neriah to start things off. We got some really cool, interesting personalities in the mix. I guess when we say personalities, I'm talking more about through their history and resume. We have some players with kind of like the who's who of Hearthstone, both in modern and historical. Like you have guys like who've been doing it for a long time, like Sixo and Neriah, and then you have guys who've been making more recent pushes. Then you have some really eclectic deck builders like Dane in the mix. So I'm looking forward to see if Dane can continue, to push his name out there, because people may know him as sort of a memer on YouTube, right? You see him play all kinds of wacky wild decks, but I want to see if he can have the chops to compete with some of Hearthstone's best, like Orange, Neriah, JustSayin.
Well, Dane should be very well set up to do so in this tournament, given his great expertise in the wild format. But bringing it back, Curse of Naxxramas, of course, as you said a few moments ago, was the first expansion or adventure that came out, and with it came a lot of incredibly powerful Hearthstone cards, some of which I still don't think have been matched even to this day, especially that one in the bottom right corner there.
Yeah, that's right. Undertaker was meta-defining for so long. Part of an exercise that I did, Falcone, I'm not sure if you had a chance to browse it, considering we asked you to cast like 30 minutes ago, was going through the meta snapshot early iteration. I basically started that along with the very infamous Magic Amy back in the day. And, we created it based off of Goblins and Gnomes coming out, and people just weren't sure what the right decks to play were. We quickly find out how good Dr. Boom, Pilot Shredder, Muster for Battle, and Shielded Minibot was, but a big surprise of the expansion was how Rogue was continuing to do super well with Tinker Sharpsword Oil. On top of all these other control tools that you see, like Light Bomb being one of them, Control Warrior was also very prominent. The big thing that was on everyone's mind was, how Mid-Range Hunter was in the mix of the meta and how it dominated for so long. before all those mech decks came up on the rise.
Yeah, it's all starting to come back to me now. The mid-range paladin versus the oil rogue and the mech mage. That was another of my favorite decks.
Yep.
Actually, the first deck I ever got a good legend rank with, like my first top 50 legend, was a Magic Amy deck. It was mid-range paladin, Master for Battle, Quartermaster. So many fond memories of that, and I'm looking forward to seeing its return today.
What was it? Was it a Magic Amy deck? I don't know. It's interesting
it was
I guess.
Yeah, it was the deck that Magic Amy posted on the snapshot that I took the list from. Maybe it wasn't hers originally, but I always remember that's where I got it from.
I do want to remind people that it was, around this time which Shaman started fading into obscurity. Around then, and people started complaining that Shaman wasn't getting enough. In which case, it would be a course of the year which Shaman got released many cards, and we'll talk about it next week. But around this time, it was all about Hunter, the mid-range Paladin, the mech mage that you mentioned, Oil Rogue, and mid-range Druid started making a big prominent appearance as well, because everyone started playing Force of Nature Savage Roar, as you guys know. However, given that we are limited by the client's restrictions, players will be using the nerfed versions of cards. We can't turn back time and play, Force of Nature with charge, or we can't make Innervate, give you 2 mana. We'll see how things, adapt to the modern twist now that players have to, otherwise they'll just copy the decks exactly one for one for how it was historically. Now we'll see, how they adapt to all this changes.
But there we go, match 1, getting ready to start. Jackie versus Neriah, and oh no, mages banned on both sides. I guess it's still just it is just Naxxramas at the moment, right? Or are we throwing GBD in the mix as well now?
It is both are available.
It is both, right? Okay. In that case, I'm very disappointed that we won't be seeing mage. We saw a lot of Handlock last week, I believe, but look at that, Jackie. That's got to be Oil Rogue and mid-range Paladin, right?
Yes, I think I have to imagine Oil Rogue is really popular. Miracle Rogue still kind of existed because Auctioneer was still, just insanely good against those control decks like Handlock and Control Warrior. But mid-range Paladin was really solid. I have to imagine both these guys either brought Zoo Warlock, which had Implosion from GBG, and then just kind of like Void Caller being really good with Mal'Ganis back in the day. So I imagine either of those guys, whether, I think both of them strike me more as a Handlock player. I'd be very surprised. If you look at like Ant, for example, he'd probably play Zoo. And then I would imagine Control Warrior, and then just a straight up Control Priest from Neriah.
That's true. I'd completely forgotten about Mal'Ganis and Void Caller back in the day. Some of the earliest ways of cheating out the big demons, which obviously we've seen a lot of in a new form more recently. And it is going to be Warlock Mirror to start off.
Okay. Well, it looks like he's got Paladin here, Muster for Battle.
Oh, sorry.
Is on the screen, but definitely something interesting to consider was Neriah's opening hand that heavily implied that he's playing Combo Warlock. This was the final iteration of which a lot of Warlocks love to play. They end up playing kind of a mid-range / controlling curve, but in the end would have Arcane Golem with Power Overwhelming and Faces Manipulator. And that largely was because Leroy got nerfed, so people started using Arcane Golem. But then Arcane Golem got nerfed, so now Neriah is using Wolf Rider as his way to get the OTK combo. That's super funny.
Yeah, they were able to do it with Leroy Jenkins a little bit later on, thanks to Emperor Thurasan in Blackrock Mountain. But for now, Wolf Rider looks to be the card of choice. And Jackie Chan, mid-range Paladin, no surprise whatsoever. Zombie Chow, such a powerful Naxxramas card. The first beefy 1-mana minion, which was played in many, many decks, mid-range decks and control decks throughout.
Zombie Chow would be amazing in this current meta, considering that we're playing Amani Berserker, just given how terrible the 2 drops are at the moment. This Zombie Chow would fight really well against Modern Knife Juggler. So I miss Zombie Chow. And Shielded Minibot also, I guess technically Shielded Minibot still exists in current standard right now, because there's the new Dragon card for Paladin and Witchwood, but Dragon Paladin's not really a thing, but Shielded Minibot is very much a thing right now.
You've got me imagining now what Zombie Chow would be like in Odd Paladin and Odd Rogue and decks like that. Maybe not a great fit in Odd Rogue because you want to deal as much burst damage as possible. And already the players are really taking their time here, I guess, trying to remind themselves what these matchups used to be like, what the old cards that they need to play around are. And Neriah's turns are not going to be straightforward at all as we go into the game.
Yeah. So a little bit of an administrative issue here. We'll get that fixed in just a second. Players will just replay. But yeah, historically, I mean, I'm already starting to just remember everything, just like you said. I looked at the deck list really quickly from back then to kind of get a good sense, because I was casting back then as well. I was casting actually with TJ around this time.
Wow.
For the Legendary series, and that was when TJ was first casting. So don't worry, if you want to ever have inspiration, because you're saying you weren't casting back then, just go back and watch and realize how terrible we all were. Not just at casting, but at Hearthstone in general. Like, everyone was making really bad plays. It was like, you know, all these things were like, people wouldn't drop anything for tempo. People were playing for value. I think we were starting to get the sense of how important tempo was because of like mini bot muster curves or Undertaker curves. But for the most part, it was definitely a really funny time back then when everyone was so greedy. And like, you know,
Firebat has infamously said that the reason he won the world championships isn't because he was, you know, particularly incredible or did anything really new. It's because nobody else was as good as him. Nobody else was as good as they should have been at that stage. As you said, I was only sort of drafted into cast this very recently, so I haven't had a chance to go back and refresh my memory of the old deck list. But I have got, you know, these Hearthstone Wikipedia pages open with full list of all of the cards that came out in Naxxramas and GVG, and that's sort of what's freshening up my memory. And now I'm staring at Dr. Boom, thinking, oh, I cannot wait to see this played again.
Sorry, I was listening from the admin. We're about to start the game in about a second here. So bear with us as we get things started. But yeah, you know, what were your favorite decks from back then, Falcon, that you were jamming? Was there any of the ones we mentioned? Because we basically went through about like 12 to 15 archetypes across all the classes. Yeah,
so the first deck I ever hit Legend with was after the first or second week of Naxxramas. It was one of the mid-range hunter decks with Web Spinner and Mad Scientist with the Secrets. So obviously I remember that quite fondly. I mentioned before Mech Mage, mid-range Paladin, very, very cool decks. I really disappointed by these mage bans. I want to see Mech Mage and Mech Warper do its thing pretty badly.
Well, the funny thing is that despite all the nerfs, I think almost every class has experienced a pretty large degree of a nerf in some capacity. Like, for example, you see Control Warrior. I don't know if Neriah is playing Control Warrior. We don't have access to the deck lists, and largely for good reason, because we are also on delay. So just to ensure competitive integrity, we're not revealing things beforehand preemptively. But like Control Warrior doesn't have Fire War X at 2, which was a big deal for what 2-drops oriented back then. And that applies for like Druid, for example. So I would assume Druid would heavily be in the mix if Force of Nature Savage Roar is still around, if Ancient of Lore still drew 2 cards, if Innervate, you know, was 2 mana. I think Druid feels largely unplayable given that it got such a heavy nerf from what it was back then compared to what it is now.
Even Kajazan Auctioneer has had a nerf since back then with an increased mana cost, hasn't it? So it is really strange to think how all of the classes one by one have changed just a little bit. But it also makes it more exciting because it means we are going to see something new. We're going to see a fresh take on these older decks.
Yeah.
And there you go. There's Dr. Boom. There's the man.
Dr. Boom. I mean, a lot of the deck even changed for these mid-range decks as well. Knife Juggler was really popular in these mid-range Paladin decks. That got nerfed. And then you have Big Game Hunter, which used to be like 3 mana Assassinate or 3 mana Vilespine Slayer for so many decks because Dr. Boom was so popular. That also got nerfed. So I wonder how much that changes the dynamic here, because maybe Boom gets a lot better in because it aged well. Dr. Boom hasn't changed much. And then going into week 2, BGH is just harder to tempo against because it costs you a little bit more mana, so you can't swing the board nearly as much.
Right. Ragnaros the Fire Lord. Wow. I wanted to point out Antique Healbot is a card that is being played in both of these decks. We saw it in Jackie's and the Mulligan there. And although it doesn't feel like it's really a tempo-y card, just the pure strength, 5 mana, 3/3 heal for 8, it did find its way into a lot of these even mid-rangey decks. Very strong.
Yeah, I think Antique Healbot was probably the most under the radar card that was going into expansion previews. When you looked at card reviews from a lot of players, people were talking about some, you know, Trogzor, obviously, which everyone is very familiar with. They were looking at, you know, really insane cards in general. People even were predicting Pilot Shredder to be really good. But one card that people didn't anticipate to have as much impact as it did was Antique Healbot. The only player that I remember like singing praises about it was Chalky. And you know, I think everyone went on to go realize how great of a player he is. And it's going to be really crucial here because Paladin's pressure is enormous. They essentially just played Sunkeeper Terran without the offensive power to reduce their opponent's minions. And this is tough to deal with because it does cost you a lot of your own health. Neriah does have double Hellfire, but it's not like Paladin can't reload here.
No, he's able to use one of them up and quite nicely trade off the Quartermaster, but it's so much damage, as you said. Neriah already down to 12. Thanks to Jackie picking up the muster on turn 3 and yeah, getting Quartermaster down on 5. On 4 rather, with the coin. Piloted Shredder, I don't think we've mentioned that yet, is almost going to be a 2 of in every deck we see, I imagine, as it very, very quickly found itself being one of the most renowned cards in the entire game.
Absolutely. It was just so difficult to remove consistently. You know, people weren't really playing too many silence effects, and Pilot Shredders just withstand so much damage. It goes through AoE, and the 2 mana minion pool was also small enough that you would generally get like a pretty decent stat line compared to now, where it seems like a lot of minion stat lines based at every curve has like a 1/1 to screw you over all the way to the 8 mana. Right. So that's not really the case back then. It was pretty consistently a 2/2 or 2/3 with a lot of upside. Like Mech Warper would sometimes come out. You know, Sorcerer's Apprentice was like pretty common because the pool was just so tiny.
That's true.
This combo was also pretty nasty as well. Cog Hammer was a pretty underrated weapon. People always talked about muster for battle, but the amount of tempo it would generate just through Divine Shield and Taunt was really insane. So much so that people started playing Sunwalker at the end of like the next Rammus meta, and you know, obviously better minions came out like Dr. Doom, but this was a really powerful combo.
Okay. The implosion there was a pretty scary moment. That brought me back some memories. It did manage to get rid of the Shredder. It rolled the nice little middle number. It rolled the 3, but a 2 could have been a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting so much nostalgia right now just watching everything. Because the implosions dynamic, the crackle dynamic whenever people play Shaman, that was GVG in a nutshell. It was basically like all your cards could be doing nothing or doing the most amazing things. Dr. Boom, one turn late, but still really powerful.
Drawing Dr. Boom, playing it as soon as it's glowing green.
So the important thing here from Neriah is that he actually does have a game plan besides bursting the Paladin, considering that he has Jaraxxus in the hand, and Jaraxxus was kind of like the Blood Reaver Gul'dan, except it didn't summon an insane board immediately. But the fact is that when Jaraxxus hit the board safely, the game was on a very fast clock before you got overwhelmed by stuff. Basically, you know, the more you hero powered, the higher chance you win, just like Blood Reaver Gul'dan. And I think, you know, Neriah can actually go to that because Paladin's not known for bursting, just ever really. I think the closest we've had to like Paladin burst that wasn't anything can happen Paladin is the Even Paladin, actually, that existed in Standard right before the nerf.
Yeah, back then, back in the Naxxramas and GVG days of Hearthstone, there weren't actually that many ways of dealing a large amount of damage to the face without just using board control. We didn't have, you know, decks with 4 copies of Mind Blasts in, etc. Force of Nature Savage Roar was one of the biggest burst combos we had, and even then, something like a Sun Fury Protector can actually protect the Warlock from that. So 15 maximum health wasn't as bad as it is now.
Yeah. For sure. I think just in general, like burst in Hearthstone has been significantly reduced because of the amount of minions with charge that have been affected. That didn't stop people from still playing a bunch of OTK combos. It's just that it got progressively harder for a lot of those combos to be consistent, you know, as much as the old days. Jackie trying to take some trades here to maximize, or rather minimize, the amount of damage that these boom bots deal. Oh, just like the old days.
They didn't quite deal 4 each, but it's close. And considered going for the Ragnaros there.
Yeah, he pivoted a little bit. Can't really blame him. Mid-range Paladin was so versatile. As you see, it has things like equality for board control, but also has some decent top end. It was kind of like a very true and honest mid-range deck.
Yeah.
And I remember that Trump who's now on Tempo Storm. Back then he was on TSM, I believe. Yeah, he made a huge climb, I believe, to #1 legend with this deck, and that's how it got super popular. Because a lot of people were playing it already, but he was the one that really pushed it to prominence.
Yeah, and I think you summed it up perfectly when you said it can just do everything. It can clear the board, it can have an aggressive start, it can just hit the opponent in the face a bunch. And Sylvanas, a card that rotated out, was a classic card, rotated into the Hall of Fame. Another one of the most powerful cards back in old school Hearthstone, and Neriah is going to have a bit of a hard time dealing with it. Going to try and, I guess, give Jackie an imp rather than one of his minions.
Yeah. Just really stall on the board, because he is actually fairly close to potentially killing his opponent, so he doesn't want to. Oh, he's going for the Dark Bomb. If it steals the Sludge Belcher, and it does.
Oh no!
I was wondering if we were playing GPG, but that, in a nutshell, exactly what was very. There's a lot of board tension, and there's a lot of big board swings because of things like Sylvanas and Implosion and Ragnaros.
Obviously, there's a big smile from Jackie when that happened then. And, he loves a good meme. He loves a good wacky deck or wacky moment in Hearthstone. So I'm sure he's in his element right now. Still not really able to play Ragnaros the Fire Lord with lots of 1/1s on the board to absorb the damage. But Shredder and True Silver looks like a pretty nice play here.
I guess the way to summarize what just happened is, as much things change, a lot of things stay the same. Those kind of board swings with mind control tech are happening back then as well with Sylvanas. You could power overwhelming your own Sylvanas. We've seen people do like crazy BGH plays on their own Sylvanas.
Yeah.
So, Neriah was thinking about, if he kept his Sludge Belcher alive, if he could play Jiraxis safely. Now he has to change that plan significantly, I'd say. And those double TKO bots will come in really clutch. The only question is when he can turn the corner against Jackie's board, which has just a lot of resilient death rattles that's hard to get through.
Yeah, I was just about to point out this play. Obviously, Jiraxis, the Sludge Belcher is causing it a big issue. He could use the weapon to deal with it and get rid of the slime, but that still leaves everything else on the board. But playing the Twilight Drake, backing it up with the Sludge Belcher, maybe allows him to clear off a few more of these threats next turn and then set up Jiraxis. So I like to see that. But Jackie already hovering over Ragnaros there.
Yeah, I mean, Ragnaros is pretty weak on this board. 4 targets you just don't want to hit. And if you clear the Sludge Belcher, you are reducing the amount of targets. But there's only like 2 things you do want to hit, which was the Twilight Drake and most often hitting your opponent's life total.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Frodan? This is one-off lethal right now.
Maybe if he got a charger off the Pirate Shredder, it could have been some weird obscure lethal.
Oh my goodness!
Like if he can't, because he has to get like a specific. I think actually get Bluegill Warrior, it would have been maybe some lethal scenario. But obviously the pool has increased significantly because they're playing wild, so there's hundreds and hundreds of 2-drops by now compared to like the 60 or 70 in rotation back then.
Wow, both players now low health total as Neriah picks up the Wolf Rider. There's no way he's going to get there this turn, as he's had to use up the Faceless Manipulator, and there's no Power Overwhelmings in sight.
Yeah.
But still unable to play Jiraxis, so he can't really speed up the conclusion of this game too much.
Man, I'm just kind of like realizing how insane Defile just like has how important it's been for like Warlock and their core strategy, because I'm looking at like Minibot and Pirate Shredder, I'm thinking, how do you ever deal with this? I'm like, oh, Defile. It just kills everything.
Sometimes it's nice to get in our time machine to back and go to a time where that wasn't a constant threat for the Paladins. As lay on hands, big draw right now. Jackie, health total getting a little bit low, hand getting a little bit empty. Again, he will be considering Ragnaros the Fire Lord this turn though, as he can deal with 2 out of these 3 minions, and then actually every target is pretty good. There's no 1/1s now for Neriah. Yeah,
and it was really important for Neriah to clear that just because of the threat of the second Quartermaster. And right now, it's kind of like a game of chicken. Jackie sees 8 damage on the board, realizes that he could die to just, a straight up power overwhelming. Sometimes even a Jiraxis weapon attack can be enough. And so this is Jackie's cue. It didn't end up setting up for a lethal, which is something that you have to consider against the Warlock. And Neriah does have a semi-punish. Oh no, but it doesn't have a way to defend because big BGH just takes his entire turn.
Yeah,
he's got access for safety here.
Oh my goodness. So he can't deal with the Ragnaros this turn. Like you said, Big Game Hunter is an option next turn and can be played alongside the hero power. Neriah may be able to start to stabilize, but looking at Jackie's hand, that equality, it's not going to do all that much because Neriah's hand's empty. I guess a consecration would be better.
Yeah, the consecration is huge. Neriah trying to figure out what's the best like trade setup, so that way he can play around the Light's Justice. So he ends up taking a little damage. It does put himself in a position where Jackie can just go all face with everything he has instead of a potential 1-in-4 lethal.
Jackie picks up Dr. Boom as well. So even if he doesn't get the lethal this turn, there's only one Big Game Hunter in Neriah's hand. Jackie could end up with 2 of these big threats. But maybe you could argue that's going a little bit too all in. We don't know if Neriah runs anything like a Twisting Nether.
Yeah, that is true. There is a possibility of just those big wide board clears. Still kind of surprised that Jackie won't take his odds. I think he's just really respecting the Warlock's threats. And, you know, he's probably relying on Dr. Boom just to finish this game.
Yeah.
But let's see what comes out of this Pilot Shredder. Doomsayer is a possibility, which would bring us just like old times.
Unstable Door was interesting as well, because now Neriah, yeah, he can put the Draxus weapon into it, but both of the Boombots die, and suddenly he's taking possibly 8 damage to the face, something that Neriah can't really afford, so he'd have to play his hero power and play this Earthen Ring first. Right.
In fact, to maximize his chance of survival, he'd probably want a hero power as well.
Yeah. He does have the mana, even with the Big Game Hunter nerf, to play the Earthen Ring, the hero power, and the Big Game Hunter. And wow, that was...
Looks like he's going to BGH Dr. Boom and just take his chances with Ragnaros.
That was a very risky way of doing things, but Ragnaros is going to... Remember this throwdown, remember this type of situation where just Ragnaros to the face ends the game. Oh, try again. Ragnaros to the face would end the game.
Yeah, I do. That was that was for, like, you know, highest stakes at IEM and DreamHack and even BlizzCon. Like, Ragnaros coin flips are essentially what defined a lot of matchups and series. Lothar pickup is just kind of like a 5/5 in this position. Neriah clearly would have played a lot better and more efficient spells had he had him in his hand. Jackie could increase his odds for a lethal with equality and a hit, but I don't know if that's what he wants to do, considering that he could dominate the board just with Ragnaros killing a minion. He does pick up a consecration.
Oh boy, so that is a full board clear whenever Jackie wants it. If Ragnaros... Okay, it didn't end the game now, but if Neriah doesn't get rid of Ragnaros this turn, then it's going to be guaranteed lethal.
Well, I mean, Neriah picks up Power Overwhelming, which is kind of a fantastic pickup in this position because that allows him to push damage with his Infernal.
Yeah.
And let's see. I mean, it's going to get cleared most likely regardless because of equality. But if his opponent didn't, he would actually have a pretty decent 2-turn lethal setup because he puts his opponent down to 19, and then he has an opportunity to potentially draw into damage.
Yeah, it's scary how much Power Overwhelming does, actually. Like, if Neriah he couldn't afford to do this, obviously, but if he wanted it, he had 17 damage available to go to the face that turn. And now, as you said, Jackie's going to just clear away this board and put Neriah down to 3.
He's 1 damage off lethal with the consecrations just being drawn. If he had Coghammer equipped, that's just 6 damage right there.
Yeah. So 1 mana off as well.
Well, I mean, guess what's nice is that if you like Lotheb and Coghammer and go face, you just have double consecration next turn, and then your opponent has to draw like restore or health restoration of some kind, which I don't know if he does. He might just have straight up Mal'Ganis.
That's true. Mal'Ganis would be potentially an answer to this.
Right.
Just the Divine Shield on this Lotheb and the fact that it's taunt as well is going to be a huge pain.
It's so big. I mean, we're kind of talking about how Sunwalker was really good right before GVG dropped, and it still was pretty decent. It was just that everyone was already playing with the new GVG tools.
Oh, Iron Beak Owl. Even at 3 mana, look at the work it's going to do here.
this is kind of like the cost of Neriah playing around of a lot of stuff. He's so close to lethal. He has 15 damage on board, and remember, he swung at a couple of small tokens with his Jirax's weapon over the course of multiple turns. So if he was more aggressive, he would have that lethal, but Paladin would also have a little bit better board. So would Paladin get that extra 4 damage? These are the kind of questions that, you know, people were asking back then. Like, did I push face damage enough?
But as close as Neriah is going to come to stabilizing here, we do see 2 consecrations in Jackie's hand, along with the weapon, obviously. He has all of the damage he needs to just end this game next turn, and there's nothing Neriah can do about it.
If he was given one more turn, if Jackie didn't have that burst, Jackie would have to clear, and then Neriah may have an opportunity to stall. And that quartermaster draw, like, Neriah goes for the clear, so he makes kind of a correct read with the top deck, but double consecration will close out this game. And I do think that this was a relatively good win here for Jackie, because I personally believe that Combo Warlock was one of the strongest decks in the format, but people just didn't really play combo decks very proficiently back then compared to how they play now. Granted that data and statistics were very unrefined back then. Everything was just game driven. But I personally believe that Combo Warlock was a top 2 deck or top 3 deck in the meta very easily. And actually, funny enough, the chat's on delay, or the stream's on delay, so I see Zalay in chat. Zalay was one of the people really pushing Combo Warlock for his tournament runs, because that was when he was first starting to compete back in the GBG.
Right, but it was a difficult deck to play, as you said. It's difficult to sort of work out exactly when he can start pushing damage to prepare for the power overwhelming faceless lethal, when he needs to be careful, when he needs to be clearing the board, and with big threats like Ragnaros the Firelord and Dr. Boom being played turn after turn. Neriah was in a difficult spot there. Jackie takes the win though. It is Conquest, so he won't be playing his Paladin again. Which I believe leaves him with his own Warlock and the Rogue, which I'm pretty excited to see as well.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like we said, well, a lot of nerfs did come into play here. One of the biggest ones to Rogue was Blade Flurry. Warsong Commander nerf, of course, would matter next week for the Grand Tournament in Blackrock Mountain. But for now, the biggest nerfs to consider that impact this week's metagame is things like Big Game Hunter being at 5 mana. Arcane Golem doesn't have charge, so, you know, power overwhelming, Faceless Manipulator is not as strong. Blade Flurry was a huge thing for Oil Rogue, because it also hit face. It's
exactly.
Not just mana cost.
That was like the strongest thing about the Oil Rogue. You'd use the oil, you'd buff the weapon to something like 7 attack, swing it in, and then Blade Flurry to deal a second set of 7 attack.
Oh, that's right. Charge was also nerfed. I don't think Raging Worgen OTK was around for then, because people were not playing like the Wild Pyromancer Battle Rage stuff. But Fiery War Axe, huge nerf. Innervate probably having the biggest impact, along with Force of Nature. I think Druids these days could still, if we played with Force of Nature, Innervate, they could get by with just Ancient of Lore drawing 1 card perhaps, even though it is a big deal.
But Ancient of Lore and Keeper of the Grove
okay.
we're both 2 ofs in every Druid deck ever, and you're right, Execute was a 2 of in every Warrior deck, and now is not, because the tempo loss of playing the Execute now, it's not like you can just throw it in these aggressive Warrior decks like Dragon Warrior back in the day. It has to be more thought out than that.
How many cards got nerfed at this point? There's so many. There's 6 here. Oh, Abusive Sergeant also. That's something that you can't sleep on, because that was a huge thing for aggressive decks back in the day too, especially like Zoo and Hunter. That was a huge important card, because it was 4 damage swing on the board a lot of times. So man, I'm just like thinking about every deck feels like it got impacted in some capacity, except for maybe Priest. I didn't see anything that affected Priest from those nerfs that we saw on the screen, did we?
No, I don't believe we did, which is funny, because Priest recently has been one of the strongest classes in Hearthstone, at least for the last year, ever since, I guess, Draken Operative was printed.
Yeah.
But it is strange to think just how many nerfs there have been when you really think about it there. Like, I don't think I've ever been presented with a full list in front of me like that to sort of piece it all together.
Yeah.
It's going to be the Warlock mirror by the looks of things, and Jackie's actually playing Zoo, and of course he's running an egg.
Of course Jackie would play Zoo, because not only was Zoo really good, but because it has eggs, and now of course Jackie's claim to fame is, unfortunately.
Jackie does love some eggs in Hearthstone. And of course, Nerubian Egg in Zoo was incredibly powerful. Again, power overwhelming, allowing it to trigger the death battle and get a good trade in whenever the Zoo player wanted. along with Defender of Argus, Dark-Eyed Dwarf, Abusive Sergeant. There are so many ways of killing off the egg.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to talk about what's changed in the past 4 years that it's fairly difficult to cover all of them. And it's just like the more we watch it, the more like, oh yeah, this guy, like Iron Beak Owl being at 3 mana. That's like also a very subtle but important nerf to help squeeze in these really important mana efficient plays. Because otherwise, you know, Owl could be played on curve against like the spiders or against Rubian Egg.
Right. Jackie seems to be getting ready for a pretty big play coming up next turn, though. Yeah, the egg gets silenced, but even so, Void Terror to just become a bigger minion whilst killing off the spiders is still something to consider. That being said, Piloted Shredder on 4 is always pretty appealing as well.
Yeah, Piloted Shredder is really good. Abusive Sergeant and Void Terror honestly isn't that terrible in this spot either. I kind of like Shredder better than the Abuse Sergeant Void Terror, even though the Void Terror Abuse Sergeant, I believe, adds more stats right now. I just think Pilot Shredder is just more stability onto the board, and you do want to curve into Doomguard. So this is definitely a very aggressive play from Jackie, and it could just be recognition that he wants to pressure his opponent the best he can right here, right now, which is the max amount of stats, max amount of damage, force your opponent to react, because it is a combo deck, right? And the best way to kill it is to pressure it.
It's crazy to think that if not for the Iron Beak Owl last turn, Jackie would have a 4/4 on the board in addition to everything else. As he now picks up Void Caller, another fantastic 4-drop, especially with Doomguard sitting in hand, ready to hit Neriah in the face as well.
Do you want to kind of let the general public know, if you're watching this and you think Possessed Lackey could be one of the most, you know, busted heat cards out, Void Caller did it first. He did it first, he did it better, he did it faster. Void Caller is very much a current problem in Wild compared to Possessed Lackey. So a lot of Wild players were rather indifferent to Possessed Lackey nerf compared to standard players. And largely because of how insane he can be for the board. You know, Skull Minari, everyone knows how insane that is when you're able to get demons. Void Caller adds a body to that a turn earlier and forces your opponent to silence it. This Doomguard pull is really nasty. Look at Neriah's face, just recognizing this is a bad situation. Needs to play into Healbot and stall so that way Hellfire can hopefully clean up most of his board.
It's the board that he just doesn't have an easy way of clearing. Exactly, Hellfire is an option. Defender of Argus now to buff up Jackie's minions even further out of range of cards like Hellfire is such a big draw.
We've got 13 damage on board. Pilot Shredder adds the most stability to the board, and then Defender of Argus adds the most immediate stats. The big things to worry about is like Hellfire AoE. So Defender of Argus can put a lot of things in the way of it. If you see, how would you actually play Defender? Would you taunt up the small guys so that way AoE kills off the Antico bot, or would you pump the big guys?
Well, Jackie has answered that question for me and seems to be pushing everything to the face. This is sort of a hedge way of playing around Hellfire as well, though, because it means Neriah can't trade into the bigger minions and then Hellfire the board away to finish them all off. If he's going to play the Hellfire, the anti-kill bot cannot chip away some of that health first. But Power Overwhelming Hellfire does get Neriah out of that situation, buffing up Healbot's health as well, and now he can clear away the board. Having also drawn Twisting Nether to clear another board in a few turns' time. Neriah is looking in a much more stable spot here, despite the fact he is down to 7 health.
It's tough, though. I mean, stable is a very relative term. I think a Sludge Belcher would be massive for Neriah in this position. Implosion also can be really big, because you Implosion and kill the Shredder.
Or not kill the Shredder. No, he got it. He got the 4. That's fine.
That is interesting.
Well, that's not a GVG or Naxxramas cut.
I mean, I don't know if the lifesteal will really matter, but we are playing in WoW, so they're allowed to play. They're allowed to play with cards that come off of those shredders and random effects. I mean, this just looks good. Jackie's been life tapping every single turn because he cares about his hand resources in the event that Neriah is able to generate a lot of value. But man, I'd be really tempted to just go as much stats onto the board and pressure my opponent before he can get to really important turns like Jiraxis to stabilize. Looks like Jackie favors trading in this spot, though.
Wow. I guess it's just classic Zoo. It's just aggressively tapping, drawing the deck, putting as many stats on the board and sticky stats as well, like Piloted Shredder, like the spiders, like the eggs, all of these various tools. And Jackie's health isn't too low at the moment. He does have to consider the fact that Neriah may have some charge damage coming his way in a bit. We see Wolf Rider and Faceless Manipulator in the hand. That's 6, but add 1 Power Overwhelming, then that's 14 damage. So Neriah is sort of getting there in his own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think Neriah might have to just fight for the best tempo possible. Playing BGH for 5 just feels so terrible, though. I might want to just play Faceless Manipulator on the opponent Shredder just to have maximum board tempo, but like Wolf Rider Faceless Manipulator does not feel great in this position.
No, it doesn't. Maybe he has to trade the Wolf Rider into Piloted Shredder this turn.
Yeah.
Oh? Yeah, okay, so play his own Shredder with the play you mentioned a moment ago and get rid of Jackie's Shredder. Garrison Commander.
Oh, Garrison Commander allows you to tap twice.
Luckily not. Neriah was able to get rid of that. But
Just
Power Overwhelming.
Close to lethal, right? It's very close.
Yes, 8 damage with the Direwolf and the Power Overwhelming. Jackie unable to draw the last 2 damage that he needs, unfortunately. But he can prevent Neriah from tapping next turn, potentially, if he wants to now put everything into the face. Power Overwhelming on the Lifesteal minion would also allow him to restore some of his health as well. Not as relevant, I guess.
It might be, but I mean, because I guess now that the Wolf Rider has been used, unless Neriah is running 2 Wolf Riders, like
and Faceless
Manipulator and Wolf Rider was used.
Yeah.
So it feels like your life total is less important, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Jackie just once again just sticking everything on the board. But Neriah does have Twisting Nether. Ooh, or Hellfire. Hellfire means he's taking some damage. I guess there isn't really a benefit to doing that, unless he wants to play Big Game Hunter as well for tempo.
Man, that's tough. Your opponent held back 1 card, but if he had Doomguard, he absolutely would have played it for the lethal, so you know that he has to draw into it. Twisting Nether still leaves you a board at least, and Big Game Hunter gives you a response to Dr. Boom if your opponent drops it off the top.
Dr. Boom's still an issue because of the boom bots. Neriah's only down to 8 health. I guess he can play Jiraxis after clearing the board, which would put him back up to 15 again. I think I prefer Twisting Nether this turn, but it's not easy.
I don't know. I actually think Hellfire BGH is better because you establish better tempo onto the board, and then you kind of take the damage preemptively so that Jiraxis heals you for more. The only thing is that it's just bad against that Doomguard draw. If Jackie has 16 to 18 cards left, it's a one-up because your opponent already pulled the Doomguard.
I was gonna say, well, yeah, because now he can put the weapon into the Direwolf Alpha, which does reduce the damage on the board.
Yeah, okay.
There's only 6 damage, I think, remaining. A Power Overwhelming makes that 10, though. Jackie is once again really close. That's 1 off lethal now.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's really close. Doomguard's still lethal in this position. Oh, Gannis.
Too expensive to play this turn, but that's going to be great for next turn. But now that Neriah's held on to Big Game Hunter, it's not quite so bad.
So upon evaluating it, I actually really like Neriah's line because it covers everything for a top deck, and it gives him the ability to draw into ways to lock the zoo out with Sludge Belcher. So he actually hedged everything while still being able to get one of his most expensive cards out. It seems fairly obvious in hindsight because it's like 9 mana, play Jiraxis. But I mean, it's hard not to look at those AoE with 6 minions on the board and think, I'm on a clear because I have Pilot Shredder.
It's just so strange because nowadays Jiraxis is such an unappealing card because 15 health is just a scary position to be putting yourself in against most decks. But Jackie, once again, throwing everything into the face. Neriah, 5 health left. Hellfire now would put him down to 2. He can still play the Twisting Nether and follow it up with his hero power, whilst also leaving a 2-drop on the board from the Shredder. That's not looking too bad, but it wouldn't take much for Jackie to kill Neriah right now.
So your opponent floated 4 mana, so he has to be holding situational cards as well.
Oh my goodness.
He's going for kind of like the Twisting Nether play, but hold on to it for definitive answers to big boards, like, you know, if his opponent's able to set up a big demon. And now Neriah is actually one turn off him lethal, with Jackie's best play being Mal'Ganis. Now imagine if Jackie used the power overwhelming aggressively on like the 1/1, for example. Neriah wouldn't have the availability of Hellfire.
The light protects.
He's...
Oh my gosh.
Well, that is actually going to give Neriah the game. Huge smile from Neriah as he can just get rid of the immunity. Killing Mal'Ganis with the Game Hunter and smack Jackie in the face with everything, tying up this series. And wow, that was a real nail-biter.
Yeah, I kind of thought that Jackie would be able to press in for the damage, but
yeah, I thought so too.
Even if Jackie was hitting like with power overwhelming, we saw that you know, Neriah had Twisting Nether. But the big thing is that there's a lot of trades that happened onto the board, which feels like as the Zoo player, especially against a defensive Warlock player, you really need to get that damage in, because at a certain point they will lock you out no matter what. And this stays true every time you see Zoo up against Warlock, especially in modern day now that they have Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Every damage leading up until like the 8, 9, 10 mana turns is going to count. And Jackie did favor board, which is what Zoo traditionally does. That's what Zoo does in like a lot of those more faster matchups. Against aggressive and mid-range decks, you really need that board control. But against a deck that has so much AoE, spell removal, and combo damage, I feel like pressing the issue is a lot more important than favoring board control. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like a strange flashback. Now, well, recent Control Warlock had a lot of healing, and old anti-Killbot Control Warlock had a lot of healing. But between those points, there really wasn't any tools like anti-Killbot, like Dark Pact, like the Spellstones. And so back then and now, the Warlock has a chance to stabilize. I agree. If Jackie was able to just push a little bit of damage earlier on, as the healing is finite, he may have gotten there. Unfortunately, he didn't make it though. And this is looking like a Control Warrior to me.
Yeah, I love Control Warrior, partially because I think Control Warrior is probably the most pure control deck of all time. I think a lot of control decks these days tend to do some pretty unfair things. Like they just literally kill everything that you have, and they just generate infinite value off their Death Knights. Which does bring an interesting question, like if Death Knights will become too good in Wild, just like if like Reno will be too good in Wild, because like eventually enough single power cards are going to be high enough in value or strength that like everyone just play Reno decks. But you know, I think Control Warrior didn't have that. It had very limited range of removal, but it also has some very defined win conditions with like Grom, Hellscream that you could easily play around if you just like account for everything. So I just really like Control Warrior from head to toe back in the day. I think that's what made people fall in love with the deck.
It's not quite classic tank up warrior, as Justicar Trueheart came out later on,
which was also oppressive in its own right once it was good.
But yeah, exactly. The Gromash win condition with the Alex Straza, it was one of my original favorite decks in Hearthstone. Unlike a lot of the fatigue decks we've had more recently, it does have its win conditions, which is quite cool. And its game plan against the Zoolock is just going to be to sort of just deal with the threats using as few resources as possible and just try and last Jackie Chan out of the game, just win the attrition and end up by playing his big threats and leaving Jackie with nothing.
Yeah, and a huge proponent for, you know, the way Control Warrior function was the strength of this card that's in Neriah's hand. It's Death Spite. It's a 4-mana weapon with 4/2 stats, and it basically was kind of like Blood Razor, but much stronger because it could be used offensively as well. Blood Razor is very weak on the offense compared to Death Spite hitting for 8 and clearing a bunch of 1/1s twice, once over. And now Neriah dominates the board because of the Death Spite. You know, anything that Jackie plays can easily get dealt with. And Neriah just has to survive until he can play a big threat like Dr. Boom, or if he plays Alex Straza or Grom. And then Zoo can't really do anything. But Jackie also has some really powerful cards in his hand as well, with, you know, the Doomguard and the Dr. Boom. I really like Doomguard in this position, but I can imagine why he's afraid because of the threat of Death Spite execution.
Yeah, also, there may be an element of just not wanting to discard his Dr. Boom from the Doomguard. He doesn't get a chance to play it very often, you know? He needs to enjoy the moment. But yeah, the oppressiveness of the Deathbite really shines here as he can just swing it straight into the Flame Imp and clear away both Taunt minions in one foul swoop.
Yep.
Something which Blood Razor is, I guess, equally proficient in this situation. It's funny how they both have their pros and cons. They're both very different cards and very similar. But Neriah, yeah, clears up the board nicely, and now he's going to be the first player to curve into Dr. Boom, putting him, I think, in the lead.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a good pickup for Jackie, because without that, it was looking like a kind of a mediocre Doomguard turn.
Yeah.
Consider that you can discard Dr. Boom.
Yeah.
And this sets up kind of a bad state for Neriah. This is one of the worst Dr. Boom scenarios you'll ever see, where it's like you're developing into a board that can even just like race you. He doesn't even have to address Boom. He can just play his own Boom. And this is kind of like this is exactly what defined the GVG meta for any mid-range. This exact scenario.
That being said,
Whirlwinds execute, Boombots going wherever. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Well, Whirlwind, it's kind of awkward, the Whirlwind execute, because there's the chance that the Boombots go into the Dr. Boom and make the execute less effective.
Exactly.
So he's going to start by trade. Oh. Okay.
Might actually be one of the better scenarios here for Neriah, because he has execute to deal with Dr. Boom, and then if he's able to snipe this 3/4 in like the highest of high rolls,
Oh my goodness.
he actually can just straight up Shield Maiden, which is like super sick.
That's true.
It's like he wants to just take a safe route though.
I do quite like this play. Like, you milk the Acolyte of Pain for some card draw while he can. Gets Big Game Hunter. 1 mana too expensive to play.
Close.
Wow. Yeah, so two pretty crazy things happening there. As Neriah does suffer from the Big Game Hunter nerf and from some bad Boombot RNG.
It is. Oh man. So like, if Neriah took a little bit more damage and Jackie had power whelming, that's actually still like a lethal setup. So Jackie might have lost the board in this spot. But it's not like he doesn't have options in this disposal, because Pilot Shredder is really sticky. Hard for Warrior to clear it. Warrior's not really a class without Deathbite well equipped to deal with Shredder, and even then, Deathbite doesn't answer Shredder very cleanly.
Yeah, Jackie just able to finish off the Dr. Boom nicely there. He's not. I don't think he's in a bad spot at all. He's trying to empty his hand so that next turn he can play Doomguard without having to discard anything.
Second Acolyte is actually kind of a big deal as well, because that makes Whirlwind really good. And Neriah looks like he might just want to trade his life here. It says that, you know, if you have enough damage to kill me from hand, then congrats. But I don't think there should be, unless it's like double powerwhelming Soulfire or something like that.
That's right, though. I do like that, putting up the Acolytes and just trying to bait some of the damage in as Mal'Ganis comes up off the top, and it's going to buff the Flame Imp. But it's 2/2, right? It's 2/2 buff.
Yes.
Flame Imp goes into
5/4.
It's crazy.
9 damage. Put your opponent down to 10 life. I'd be really tempted for Jack if I was Jackie just to go all face. I don't think trading into the Shield Maiden is going to produce much results, considering that Control Warrior is still very heavy into removal. He could have Brawl, for example.
No, that's true. That's true.
You know, another execute, BGH. So I wouldn't. You know, again, this is a question to kind of a gut check of what kind of Zoo player are you? Are you one that just favors the grind out, or are you one that's pressure oriented, depending on what your deck list and the state of the matchup?
That was always one of the more difficult points about playing Zoo, actually, is knowing when to switch tactic, when to go from board control into just slamming everything into the face. And Jackie's not got long to make this decision.
I'm jamming face, man. I like it. Jackie recognizes where the place is.
And there's the Brawl off the top. I guess rewarding Jackie's play.
Perhaps here.
Yeah. May as well get 2 draws for free.
I wonder if there's any lethal draws here for Neriah, but I don't think so, because BJ's too expensive. But it's like one of those things where Zoo's life tapping so much, and Flame Imp did a lot of damage as well. Okay, I don't mind the sequencing. Neriah's trying to maybe use Whirlwind and the Acolytes like attack to deal with the Pilot Shredder remains. Oh.
Yeah. Just seeing what comes off of the Shredder first is a good play, and now both Acolytes can trade in for an extra card draw. That's looking nice.
That is a really good spot here from Neriah, and it's kind of like making sure to maximize his potential options, because things like shield block is a massive pickup here. He doesn't even have to whirlwind anymore. He can just play BGH and hero power because of that shield block.
And now he's drawn a Grommash as well. He's looking at setting up his own lethal in the next couple of turns.
Exactly. I just really like this play from Neriah.
I'm really enjoying this game just overall. It's so refreshing, right? Witnessing the old meta one more time from, I guess, from through a new lens, right? Because we've experienced a lot of different metas since then. And it's just nice to remind ourselves what it used to be like as Jackie almost gets to lethal.
It's close. I mean, he could tap for Soulfire, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he's got 5, 6, 11. Oh, man, if he had that Soulfire, that would have been 15.
Or even a Power Overwhelming.
Yeah, Power Overwhelming would have also been it, too. Assuming he has Soulfire in his deck. We haven't seen it in the 2 games he's played it so far.
That's true. But he's going to have to, at this point, he's going to have to deal with the Armor Smith, because the potential for Neriah to just keep gaining one bit of armor at a time, trading all of his minions in, is just too devastating for Jackie.
Oh, man. That's where you cue up the epic sax music on Trollden's videos. Grom Whirlwind. This is something I haven't seen in such a long time. But that's going to do it. Neriah's up 2-1 over Jackie.
Yeah, very, very proficiently playing these control combo-oriented decks. I'd have loved to see Grom Taskmaster as well. That would have been another old way of doing it.
Or Death's Bite attack 12.
Oh yeah, that was a big one too.
Well, that was the entire dynamic between Control Warrior and Handlock, because it was like they could always stay at 15 with like Jiraxis, but then you had like 14 with Death's Bite and Grom. You'd have like Death's Bite, Grom, Taskmaster, but then your opponent would put like a Sludge Belcher. So there's a lot of like back and forth, which people loved, because it was always like every opponent was one turn off lethal or like one mana off lethal consecutively, which is what people really like. In the end, I think if people were to pick an ideal Hearthstone series, they wouldn't necessarily only want crazy unstable portal, or I guess in modern day, you know, crazy discover shenanigans. They actually really like those, oh my gosh, he's one turn off and now he has to do this, and now his opponent's like 1 damage off, and now his opponent's like 1 mana off.
Yeah, and it's something the players are going to have to really think hard about in this tournament specifically, is working out where those breakpoints are for lethal. Like, as you just said, the 10 from the Grommash, the 14 from the Grommash Deathbite, and the 16 from the Grommash Deathbite and Taskmaster is something that anyone playing against a Control Warrior is going to have to think about as we look. And Neriah's only got his Priest left, and quite honestly, Frodan, I don't remember that much about Priest back in the Naxxramas GVG days. I remember Dark Cultist being a huge deal. The first 3 mana 3/4 with the Death Rattle, give a friendly minion 3 health, which was very strong. Obviously, Light Bomb, you talked about a little bit earlier as well, was a great board clear tool. But it didn't have any of the big win conditions that Priest has had more recently. Yeah,
it just had like really solid minions. You mentioned Dark Cultist being one of them. It played like, the Shrinkmeister, so it could like combine with Cabal Shadow Priest. You're right. Like Control Priest didn't really have too much. It was just to outvalue late game and utilize things like Light Bomb, Sylvanas, maybe a Mind Control or Cabal Shadow Priest to swing the board decisively, and then just kind of grind you out. And very, famously, Amaz utilized this deck a lot with Thoughtsteal. You see it in the hand. That was like a big, quote, win condition, was to take your opponent's Mountain Giants or Harrison their Assassin's Blade, which was, that was just like the way Amaz was crushing tournaments, just like having an answer for everything, being able to steal the threats and turning unfavorables into favorables based off those Thoughtsteal.
Jackie's Rogue, though, with Sprinting, is looking like it's the shell of an old school Oil Rogue. I can't imagine him wanting to run Blade Flurry, though, so I'm curious as to what the rest of this deck's going to look like. Without
Blade Flurry, Oil Rogue loses a lot of its fangs, It's become very dulled because it can't burst. The Oil Rogue would often, assuming your opponent had weapon removal, bait out that weapon removal, and then just camp on like a single charged weapon that he can flurry for face damage and clear your board anytime. That doesn't really exist. So if Jackie still is playing Oil Rogue, he's going to be really dependent on this Violet Teacher to generate a lot of value. But against a priest that has like Wild Pyromancer, we'll see.
Neriah with the Blade Master Light of Naru. I forgot about these old strong tools. I just think about Binding Heal now when I think about 1 mana priest heals, but Light of Naru to summon the Light Warden and then buff it up with a Circle of Healing while Pyromancer. Priest did have some incredible combo tools.
Yeah, there was definitely some very awkward burst combinations with Priest. There was Alkanized Soul Priest with Light of the Naru, and then you could like Circle Healing a Zombie Chow. So that was some ways that you could get burst going on, but it wasn't very reliable. So Priest definitely struggled a lot. It was certainly a class that a lot of people were clamoring for better cards so they could play more than just control. And then Raza Priest was born. Actually, I skipped a couple of years. Dragon Priest came around for a while. Reno Priest was kind of like a thing, and then of course Raza Priest dominated everything.
Not many of these rogue tools have changed all that much, actually. Looking at Jackie's hand and sort of how he's playing the game, you know, the good old sap to remove Neriah's tempo, and then SI7 agent comes down. He's got Cold Bloods, which we're seeing all of the time in odd rogue still.
I'm kind of like on the fence of this play from Jackie because the tempo that he set up against Neriah is actually not as strong as literally every other card in his hand that's a minion. Like Lotheb's better because it shuts down Priest's big ways to swing the board with spells. Azure Drake just helps cantrip, plus it's so threatening with every rogue spell. And Violet Teacher, of course, needs to be dealt with immediately. So he ends up using 2 really powerful tools in Sap and the Coin. And I wonder if that's going to end up biting him later down this road, because Violet Teacher is way less threatening when you don't have things like Violet Teacher, Coin, Sap in this position. Like, if you just accept that Priest will do damage and it doesn't matter as much, then you can, you know, take the bullet for 1 turn, play Violet Teacher, Coin, Sap, and now you're in a way better position.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Jackie is actually going to struggle to get this Blade Master off of the board now because of that, I guess, slightly slower turn that he took earlier. And Neriah is just going to take advantage of the Northshire Cleric Pyromancer Circle of Healing combo here to essentially draw his entire deck.
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that you can't always account for. So the fact that Priest, like with Circle of Healing, drawing a bajillion cards, and Light Warden being a super threat. Holy crap. He's just full hand. Neriah's, you know, nodding because this is exactly what he was looking for. Yeah. That Light Warden is also going to be buffed to the map, to the skies at this stage. Holy crap.
Yep, already up to 11 attacks.
How do you come back from this? Priest just basically played like Divine Favor equivalent. Like, he just drew 7 cards in 1 turn. That's just ridiculous.
I think the huge smirk we're seeing from Jackie Chan shows that he knows he's not coming back from this. He can't even deal with the Light Warden without cold-blooding the 1 minion he has, which is fine, but then, you know, he's not dealing with anything else.
Yeah, and I think Neriah did a really good job too, just kind of like threatening the rogue and never putting him in a, like, basically he's taken proactive tempo against the rogue and never is not really relinquishing control whatsoever. Has so many good plays this turn. I think he can just take a card draw, play Sludge Belcher. That's not a bad one. Doesn't even need any more card draw, to be honest, at this stage, because he's just drawn so many cards. In fact, he very well may start playing Auchenai and hero powering, just so he has like, you know, options to burst or options to kill his opponent or control the board.
Now we see that Jackie has drawn his Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, but Neriah has Harrison Jones in the hand, and that's what happens when you draw most of your deck. You tend to have ways of dealing with pretty much anything your opponent can do. Jackie could consider playing Sprint if he wants to get more options for himself, but again, there's no development this turn if he does that. He's not actually getting anywhere.
Yeah, Blade Flurry isn't even in the hand, so it won't even come to effect. Because usually, you know, Harrison and weapon removal actually doesn't matter too much against oil. Tinker Sharpsword oil until your opponent leaves it up. And a lot of rogues,
Sure.
Towards the end of the meta, I think started just becoming very clever because weapon removal became really huge with all those weapon classes that were dominating. They just saved it in hand and used it all up in one turn, so it wasn't really like super relevant. And I don't know if it'll be crucial at this stage. Jackie just might not be able to fight back on board enough, and he just might die here. His best play is like VOD Teacher Prep Sprint. And he's taking what, 16 or 14 on the backswing.
He won't be running anything like Vanish in this deck, so there isn't a clear-cut way of removing everything Neriah has. And he's not even going to have any mana to do anything this turn anyway.
Yeah. I mean, his hand is great. 2 backstabs, fantastic. It's just that he took so long to get to this point, and I do think that part of it was Neriah drawing really well. I mean, we're not going to beat around the bush. No shot cleric with Injured Blade Master plus a bunch of heals, cheap heals, and Pyromancer is just like a recipe for success in any meta for Priest.
Right.
But this board is normally great if you can get out a couple turns earlier. But right now, Neriah is thinking about how he can kill his opponent. And that's not a position where you ever want to be against Priest, where they had the luxury at this point think about how to kill. Oh my gosh. Okay.
While Pyromancer will happily deal with everything that the Violet Teacher puts out, and Jackie's deck won't have a way of buffing all minions by 1/1 like maybe a Druid deck would. So this is just a consistent way of getting rid of everything Jackie can ever develop.
What is going on?
Priest has never been an aggressive deck, but it didn't back then have the aggressive tools that it has now. But even so, Neriah was able to very comfortably take control of that game, and it's partly because of the play. I think you pointed out right near the start. Jackie used up a turn with the sap and just developing SO7 agent. Maybe he should have played a little bit more aggressively onto the board that turn.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I felt like Jackie didn't have a lot of patience for an Injured Blade Master. I mean, there is threat of letting it stick on the board and your opponent has Cleric and heal, but even if he spends a turn drawing a card as opposed to developing anything strong himself. He wants to be playing Dark Cultist and Auchenai and Sludge Belcher very proactively against his opponent. So if you force your opponent to play like a 1/3, then your Violet Teacher dominates the board. He has to answer with specifically Wild Pyromancer Shadow or Pain, which is not a combo that they often keep. They might have the Pyromancer. So it's this thing where you set into motion like a snowball effect, and that's what we call a line of play for summary for anyone who doesn't know, obviously. A lot of people who are watching the tournament right now are probably the hardcore viewers who are thinking I'm an idiot. Why are you bothering explaining this? But there's some people who never played Hearthstone might be curious about the old meta and how things have developed since then.
That's true. I mean, a lot of new players play Hearthstone all of the time, and a lot of these players weren't playing back in the Next Ramus and GVG days. But that was a great series. Neriah able to take it away with 3 very control-heavy decks.
Yeah. So a lot of nostalgia already, happening for me. But the important thing to consider after that series is how the standings look. Neriah takes the series 3-1, but he also improved to 2-0. These are the match records from week 1. So Dane is also taking the win. And then I believe Soleil and Sixo are the other guys that took victories as well.
Right.
So we're going to do a quick interview with Neriah just to talk about his experiences, trip down memory lane. Neriah, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello, what's up?
Cool, man.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So around this time in the history of Hearthstone, this is when you first started being on stream for tournaments. I think Next Ramus and the VGVN tournaments is when I first saw you back in the day with Team Liquid, which of course you ended up joining, which is pretty hilarious. So talk to me about what's it like playing the tournament, going back to kind of the origins of your competitive roots, at least to when we saw you on stream.
Oh, it feels really refreshing, especially how even the game approached turn to turn basis. It feels like in the meta back then, in the Classic and Nax, GVG is less that, but Nax mostly, is that even smallest mistake can cost you the game.
Yeah.
And it for example, me not trading Sludge Belcher into a Sylvana cost me the game probably in game 1. And stuff like that is so tricky always. So it feels really refreshing. And I did a couple of mistakes, like not really mistakes, but I gave chances to Jackie throughout some games.
I want to ask, what is the deck building experience like for you throughout this process, and what are the challenges you face? Well, like when accounting for all of the cards that have been nerfed, obviously since this area in the history of Hearthstone.
Okay, so there is a couple of things. In the classic, like in the previous week, it was much easier because there was like way smaller amount of decks that were viable. Besides, like especially after like Hunter was super nerfed, as well as Combo Druid, and so it's like minus a couple of decks that were top tier already eliminated from the selection. But in GVG plus Nax, there was such a huge amount of decks that you can pick from. Like it's insane. Like every class had a couple of decks that were viable. Like Mage was like I was looking from there was Mech Mage, Freeze Mage, Meal Mage, and Aqua Giant Mage. Just one Mage.
Yeah.
And also even more for Warlock. There was like mid-range Warlock. There was like Silent Storm Warlock that he won the Legendary Series.
Yeah, I remember.
There was Zoo, Handlock, Demon Handlock. So it's crazy. And like it's crazy. Like all this was impacted by GVG, I think.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that it feels like you're talking so favorably upon that when people complained so much back then. I guess given that we were, kind of with Dr. Boom, it was super in your face with Pilot Shredder and Implosion.
No, I'm still against GVG. I'm still against GVG.
Yeah, okay. It sounded like for a second you're like, oh, I love GVG. I'm like, whoa, man, let's at least contextualize things. Neriah, you're up 2-0, so you're looking pretty good so far. Do you think that this kind of tournament favors like your skill set as a Hearthstone player? As the weeks progress, do you think you'll like continue to have these kinds of results?
I think it's all about remembering how it was back then and what like made those decks. Usually people are going like through the past and looking. Okay, that was like top tier meta. What was like tier 1, tier 2? But you need to remember that there was a couple of decks that are not really viable right now. Like Combo Druid that eliminated some decks as well from the field, like this Priest, for example. That I played.
Sure.
It was a bit tweaked. It was maybe you remember, maybe you not. But Pavel back then he hit like twice in a row #1 legend with the Priest.
Yeah.
And it was like really close to that deck. I changed like a couple of cards only to make Handlock matchup favorable. But it's crazy.
That's really cool insight. I forgot about that, but as soon as you reminded me, I remember because Pavel was doing really well in a lot of those tournaments. Him and Kalento both played Priest like out the wazoo, so really cool to see you bring back, and of course having results very similar to back then. You're doing really well 2014, you're doing well in 2018. Congrats on your win, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, week 2 is officially underway here. So Neriah gets a victory over Jackie, and now we're going to continue throughout week 2 with Goblins versus Gnomes and Curse of Naxxramas. Falcone, my takeaway from that interview with Neriah was, well, one, maybe GVG is not nearly as bad as we thought it was when we look at nostalgia. It actually it convinces me more than anything that in a few years' time, people will forget what they hate and just remember what they liked about it. And I think he was talking about having, decisions really impactful. If you make a mistake with death rattles and sequencing, it can cost you the game. And it's largely because comebacks weren't so easily available. Defile is like probably the biggest example of how something really cheap can swing the board and automatically kind of flip the game on its head. But things like Hellfire and Twisting Nether still didn't even answer the board back then. So you have to be very careful with how you sequence things, otherwise you get punished really heavily.
Yeah, well, I think one of the key skills in Hearthstone has always been how to maximize your chances while taking the random effects into account. And so when you think of it that way, yeah, there are a lot of random effects in Goblins versus Gnomes, but it was a real test of skill in other areas as well. And I think one of the reasons that we can now look back at GVG and just smile about it is because it's something we haven't experienced for a very long time. Part of the Hearthstone culture, I think, is to complain about current meta, complain about current year, when really the game is almost always in a very, very good spot. And I think the same can be said back then. It was still new, it was still growing, and it's just great to look back at it.
Yeah, perhaps it's a matter of opinion, because I do think that there were periods of metas where maybe Hearthstone wasn't in the best state ever. That'll actually be coming up, I believe, in a week or and a half or so, and Shaman was insane. But that being said, I do think that one thing that's interesting as we look at this next match coming up with Ant versus Dane, one thing that's interesting is that Neriah also mentioned, and I love that he said this, how the meta changes because of the nerfs, things that open up because the top decks aren't viable. Combo Druid held back more of those slower decks like Priest, and Neriah says that he took a deck list that he remembered from Pavel playing in 2014, 2015.
Right.
And how he applied that to the metagame. That's so interesting to me. It's so interesting.
Yeah. But it's almost like playing the older formats, but like with an extra ban, because I assume that Druid was banned, very often for a start, but now it's like they've banned the Druid already because of the nerfs, and now get to ban another deck as well. The meta changes every time you add an extra ban into a format, so it is very interesting to see how the players adapt to that. As it's going to be Zoo versus Paladin to start off this second series between Dane and Ant.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Chow, Juggler, Muster for Battle. That is quite literally the god draw. I guess if you could pick Shielded Minibot, you could choose that as well. But the fact is Knife Juggler goes uncontested, which means it's just better with Muster for Battle. And Ant's not fighting for board with this Argent Squire. So this Knife Juggler punish is going to be very big.
Whew. This is just so strong from Dane, as we can see Ant doesn't have any method in his hand to remove this Knife Juggler, and it doesn't matter what he plays, like Argent Squire with Divine Shield, great. 3 knives, there's a pretty good chance that gets dealt with, especially as Dane can then value trade the Knife Juggler as well if things do go wrong.
Ant has to play his 1-drops to fight for board, but this Muster for Battle into Consecration, I think that might be the beginning of the end here, because Ant doesn't have a real play next turn. He has to coin Dark Iron Door for any semblance of tempo. Oh,
yeah.
Jeez. What do you
Dark Iron
do?
Dwarf is the only play we're looking at next turn. I think clearing it is fine. It's a value trade. So I doubt there's a Mortal Coil in the Zoo deck. I could be wrong though. I know it did appear occasionally in the past. But yeah, and just had to tap and pass. He can coin out Doomguard next turn if he really wants to deal with the Knife Juggler, but he's already so behind. This game is looking like it's already reaching its conclusion.
Well, I completely agree, especially the moment Quartermaster hits the board, very similar to how Sunkeeper Repair indicates the game is over. But I do want to point out one thing, is that kind of following up on Neriah saying that one decision early on can end up costing you the game. And it feels like that might be an example of this, where it's like Ant just played Flame Imp against the Zombie Chow. And granted, Dane drew amazing. This is pretty much quite literally the nuts in every capacity. But if he was able to think about it and just like, okay, Zombie Chow, if he does just train through this thing, how do I fall behind on board? Should I play this Argent Squire? No, if he plays Shield and Minibot and fall too far behind. We know based off the context of the hands that Ant probably didn't have much to respond with, but if he was able to play that 1-mana minion, would he be able to swing it the other way? I probably don't think so, but it's definitely like an example of what they're talking about, how like these decisions that end up snowballing end up costing you the game, and it's largely because there's no like despicable Dreadlord here for Zoo to help you just wipe the board of 1/1.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Be very mindful.
There was the early turn with Jackie with the Rogue game, with the Sap and the SS7 agent, and then this play with the Flame Imp rather than the Argent Squire felt very similar to that. With if he did develop the Squire, the next turn Abusive Sergeant would have allowed him to clear the Knife Juggler 100%. And it's very difficult to play around moves like Chow into Knife Juggler into Muster for Battle, especially now when it's like 2 or 3 years later, and the players are having to also try to remember what it is they're playing around. It's not like the current meta. They don't have these deck lists memorized.
Yeah, and I mean it's closed deck list as far as I know. I'll wait for correction in case, because as last week Admirable and reynad were casting, so we're taking it this week. Just again, a review Naxxramas for people who are unfamiliar or came later into Hearthstone. It was a Death Rattle centric adventure based off the Naxxramas raid from World of Warcraft. It was the first content release for Hearthstone, which, as you can see at the bottom left, one of the memes, if you guys would like to participate, was Nax was out. And it was largely because there was such a severe delay from the announcement to the actual release. I believe it was announced in April and it released in July. I don't know if that's the actual timeline, but if I recall correctly, I think it was that. So 2.5 months like of separation, 3 months, kind of a big deal. That was kind of a thing. And then, of course, Goblins Unknowns announced at BlizzCon, and then a month later released in December and unleashed some of the most memorable and impressive cards to ever dominate a Hearthstone meta. Dr. Boom, Pilot Shredder, Implosion, amongst many other really insane cards.
Did it include Dr. Boom? Yes. Love that. Also, I mentioned earlier, I was looking forward to seeing Mech Mage. Ant Mage has not been banned, so this time around, there is a chance that we will see that deck. I guess Freeze Mage is another potential deck that Ant may be playing. It was big back then. There was no Emperor Thaurissan yet, but still a lot of damage was able to be pushed through thanks to cards like Pyroblast, Alexstrasza, Frostbolts, and Ice Lances. But I'm still hoping it's Mech Mage.
I would assume it's Mech Mage. Ant loves playing aggressive decks, even to the point where I think all of his decks are fairly aggressive. Interesting that Dane chooses to ban the Rogue instead of banning the Mage, but we'll get there when we get there. Right now we have Priest up against Hunter. Now mid-range Hunter for a brief period in GVG was the #1 dog. I do think it had to do with like before Undertaker was nerfed, because I don't think Undertaker was nerfed until after BlizzCon. Because I remember Firebat just fired Undertaker his way all the way to the finals. I remember that, and then swept him with Celestial with combo.
I don't remember the timeline on the nerfs for Unleash the Hounds or Starving Buzzard though. Obviously, some other very, very strong cards, especially when Unleash costed 2 and Starving Buzzard also only cost 2 mana. That was rather crazy back then. But Dane now going full Northshire with a deck that looks very similar to the one that Neriah just played, actually.
Yeah. Northshire, oh my god. How are Priests drawing this well? This is amazing. And your Playmaster double Northshire Cleric Circle of Healing. That's as good as it gets. Holy crap.
Oh, with Pyromancer as well, wow. It's unfortunately he can't utilize the full combo this turn. He doesn't have a powered shield, but just dropping the Blade Master, and as you said a moment ago, playing Circle on that. It's looking pretty good from where I'm sitting.
It doesn't have to do much. Northshire Cleric pressure is not going to determine the win. What actually will determine if Priest wins is whether or not they continue to draw off this Northshire Cleric. And with that Deathlord, does seem like Dane has ways to make sure Hunter can't kill this Northshire Cleric very easily.
Yeah, well, that's a freezing trap, which is just going to get bounced, but Dane sequencing his attacks correctly there. Blade Master's now going to go face for 4, and already he's piling on significant pressure. These are some really aggressive priests we're seeing today.
Yeah, so the way I can see Ant coming back is if this Deathlord pulls out a Highmane from Ant's deck.
Ooh, yeah.
This Deathlord does have a lot of drawback, but it's so sturdy for Priest that a lot of them just include it into their decks. Mad Scientist, just really late on the draw here. And I mean, Ant knows that Dane even just has the Cleric for the heal. So like, I mean, I'm not sure if this pressure really matters right now for Dane. Can just draw another card and just stabilize onto the board and have the right responses for whatever Hunter plays, because he has to be ready. The way he can lose is if this Deathlord goes horribly wrong, pulls out Savannah Highmane, the opponent coins out another one, and then he's behind.
True. There's no need to overcommit too many more minions to the board and play into an Unleash the Hound. So I do like, spending the 3 mana to drop Northshire Cleric, just continuing to draw cards. Now that Highmane's hit the board, Dane might be in a little bit of trouble. Just because, as you said, he doesn't want the Deathlord to die if he can help it.
Well, he does have Akanai Light of the Naru plays available. And the way it works is that because Light of the Naru always damages stuff, it just always summons a 1/2, no matter what.
Yeah, that's right. So two two, what are they called? I said the name
Light
earlier.
Wardens, Light
Light Wardens. Two Light Wardens are going to appear here. And Dane can, now he's gotten rid of the secret, he can just nicely trade into these 2/2s.
Yep. So one threat neutralized, another is the second high main. Ooh, wow, Ant draws it. But now it's starting to get a little scary because your opponent has Light Wardens. So there's like this weird scenario where your opponent can suicide the Arcanine, do a bunch of crazy damage, and essentially just lose the game right there and then. I like this a lot better. Knife Juggler, Unleash the Hounds, an OG combo from Vanilla Hearthstone. Gosh.
Yeah. Ant is able to, well, he's able to deal with the Death. He will get one more knife as well from the minion that gets summoned from the Death Lord, but it's kind of frustrating that he wasn't able to deal with either of those Light Wardens. And also, it's just a web spinner. You got a 1/1 from the Death Lord.
Yeah, that's definitely not a great outcome here. Although, I do wonder if there's any beasts in the pool from Standard that Ant could get.
Oh, yeah.
That might change things. I don't know.
Tyrantus.
Nothing comes top from the head here. That's really good against Priest.
Yeah.
Oh, but he doesn't have enough mana. If he had Unleashed Nesting Rock, that'd be so sick in this position.
Yeah.
But he's gonna die. He's just too far behind.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sludge Belcher again illustrating just why it's such a strong card. Unleash the Hounds on its own doesn't even allow Ant to get through it. Yeah, he can play Houndmaster as well, but then there's still the Ooze in the way when the Sludge Belcher dies. So, okay, just gonna go with the Web Spinner Houndmaster play. Kind of play as defensively as he can.
I mean, Priest is under no threat whatsoever. All of his cards are cards that need to be on the board, not in the hand. Not enough mana to spend everything. Oh, wow. I think that's a lifesteal minion, which actually would be really nice, but just, again, he's playing Arena and Dane is just crushing everything that Ant does.
I'll be totally honest with you, Frodan. I just had to look up the card, and it's if your hero took damage this turn, gain lifesteal.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned before he didn't have the mana to play this combo. Now he does. Unleash the Hounds into Nesting Rock just to create this taunt is a way of holding on for a little bit longer. But even then, I think it's just lethal. Yeah.
Hero powers his own Sylvanas, I think.
That's right. Or even just hero powers, the Nesting Rock, just the Arcanine and the the Blade Master is lethal. So Dane going to take his second game. Looking in a really good spot this series.
Dane is crushing it. He's 1-0 in the standings, and so far, so good. I do want to say that both these games feel very close to non-games, in the sense that Ant had a very awkward opening in both those games. I guess he did have the Flame Imp and the early curve, but after that Zombie Chow, basically his entire opening got invalidated. And then with Hunter, he hero powered on like the first two turns he could or something like that. It was just basically nothing that he could really do.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Double Northshire Cleric, Injured Blade Master, Circle of Healing. So as much as we might be like, Priest is really good, it also drew insane.
Yeah, I mean, back in the actual GVG days, Hunter was able to go Undertaker into the spiders, into the into 3-drop, into 4-drop. Like Hunter was able to curve really well. So actually, not drawing 1-drop into 2-drop into 3-drop is pretty unlucky for Ant there. Obviously, he won't be running Undertaker. It was nerfed, but still, there are plenty of tools like the Web Spinner that can allow him to curve out. But getting Web Spinner from the Death Lord as well was a disaster, and goes to show why Death Lord is so strong. Because yeah, mistakes can happen, like the Savannah Highmane appearing, but oftentimes it's just a very, very strong 2/8 minion that gives your opponent not much.
All right, so let's go into game number 3. We have Dane versus Ant. Dane up 2-0, ready to close it out. He's going to turn to what looks like to be a handlock, as all the Mountain Giants being mulliganed away. And then Ant, of course, playing Mech Mage with no Mana Worm turn 1.
Yeah, Ant didn't seem very happy with his opening hand, and then he mulliganed it all away and still didn't seem very happy with his opening hand after that. But Mad Scientist was strongest in Mage because the mana cheat there, a 3-mana secret in addition to a 2/2 for free without having to draw the secret. Scientist was a incredibly strong card.
Absolutely. I think Mirror Entity is a really powerful card against most of what Warlock has.
Yeah.
And there's no easy way for to trigger it too. Things. I guess they have Iron Beak Owl as their best, but Dane gonna ditch a card. He's at 10. Doesn't want to hold on to. It doesn't want to burn any important cards. Wow, Ant's just got the mech curve here. He's got Spider Tank into Pilot Shredder.
Yeah, he's drawn his curve better late than never. And I guess he's considering playing the second scientist, as multiple secrets can be a huge headache for any deck, especially when the mage is ahead on the board. But Shredder on 4 is looking so good to me.
Yeah, I think a big problem is that Dane Mortal Coiled the Spider Tank, so that leaves you less board after a Hellfire.
Yeah.
That being said, are you really sad if they Hellfire? You deal 5 plus the 3 they take, so they're gonna go down to 16 and you have double Fireball. So I mean,
yeah,
that kind of puts you really close to lethal already.
But as we can see, Dane doesn't actually have the Hellfire, and if Ant had the mana, this would just be lethal this turn, as he finally draws his Mana Worm. I don't believe Ant is ever using Fireball on this Twilight Drake. I think he's going face with everything now.
Yeah, the question that I have in my mind upon first glance of this board is, should we capitalize on the secret from Mad Scientist? Is there like counter spell? Okay. Like, I don't know the Ant's deck list, but if, let's say he plays like one of each secret that's out there, like Duplicate, Mirror Entity, and Counterspell, like what are the odds for that? Because Counterspell is really good against your opponent's board opportunities, like if he has Shadow Flame, because you know he doesn't have Hellfire. Yeah, but it does have the coin, so then the problem is, like, even if you do get lucky and get Counterspell, is the coin going to stop you? Or if you get Mirror Entity, you know, if my opponent plays Antique Healbot, is that actually valuable at all versus pushing the damage with the Mad Scientist? But then do I increase my chance of drawing the secret when I want to basically draw Frostbolt? So it's a little bit tricky here for Ant about what he wants to do with this Mad Scientist, I think.
Looking at this board, I just really like the go face with everything play, because if Dane's clearing, then he's not healing, and if he's healing, then he's not clearing. So it's just a two-pronged attack for Ant, taking the board, dealing the damage. I really like the Fireball there as well, because now the second Fireball is easily lethal next turn, and I don't see a way out of this for Dane. I can't imagine a way out of this for Dane.
I think this is pretty much Ant's, you know, crackback rather, to Dane's unstoppable opening hand. I mean, Ant didn't have the nuts of the nuts draw. If anything, he just started playing Hearthstone at turn, like with Spider Tank. But it's the fact that Warlocks did not have the right tools, and you contrast this with like a possessed Lackey Voidlord. This is the exact like difference.
I was just gonna say
2014, 2008.
Like Lackey coin Dark Pact now into Voidlord. That's like the only possible out I can think of that would keep a Warlock into this game.
They would always have it every single time.
Yeah.
Does Dane even stay alive? I don't think so. Anything he trades into. I think he would have to actually get very lucky off of Doomsayer or something else that would stop Ant from basically fireballing the face for lethal.
That's true, actually. And I would say always trading into the Shredder to test for that Doomsayer, for that slight percentage to win the game, is worth doing. But he doesn't know the fireballs in the hand. So instead, Dane makes the best play for the board that he can, and gives Ant his first win of the series with a hand that came together very nicely, and the double fireballs that Dane is going to go and have nightmares about later on, I'm sure.
I mean, it's unlikely to have the second fireball, but your opponent did play very awkwardly for the first couple turns of the game, so it does feel like he might have some damage. He couldn't beat double fireball. Maybe he could beat a single frostbolt. I'd have to go back and check the life totals again. I'm not sure if that's just enough to end the game. I think it could be, but like either way, like Dane's position was not very good. He did have double Healbot though, so if he was given a little bit extra time, he could lock out minion damage with Sludge Belcher and then lock out burn damage with Healbot, and then you know, hopefully find a way to utilize his board to push it for a victory, because he had Shadow Flame, so I'm pretty sure that any board that Ant developed would have got crushed, and then Dane could just win the game through like a couple of minions sticking.
But looking at the remaining decks that Ant has, so he's got the Hunter that he's got the Hunter and the Zoo. So it's going to be all about whether Dane can stabilize against these aggressive decks. How well can Ant curve out in the first 3 or 4 turns? Can he create a big board that survives a Hellfire and then keep pressuring the damage before Healbot comes down? These are the questions that Ant is going to have to answer for us in the next few minutes.
Well, we'll find out what happens in game 3 or game 4 rather. The Hunter versus the Warlock. This should be a good matchup for mid-range Hunter traditionally. I think a lot of the hand locks that experimented with a lot more healing, like Earthen Ring Farseers, to really stabilize against Hunter's pressure is like crucial. And then Molten Giant got unnerfed just in time for this tournament. Thank you, Ben Brode. His parting gift to us. He knew History of Hearthstone was happening, so we need Molten Giant to come back, because I don't even think Molten Giant is really played after the Nagasea Witch nerf. I'm not sure. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But good lord, Ant again drawing pretty decent curve here, right? He's got the Pilot Shredder into the high main. That's just hard for the Warlock to deal with.
Yeah, no one drop again, but that's fine. Like, again, Mad Scientist, especially when Dane doesn't know Ant's deck list, is just a nightmare to play around. And 2 into Animal Companion, into Shredder, into Coin High Main, or into Lothar.
Oh no!
Looking good.
Oh jeez. All right, there is Sludge Belcher and Healbot though, and that Owl might also be really crucial as well. Don't sleep on that draw. He might look like a weak card at this position.
And picking up Houndmaster off the top there, though. Yeah, just going to slam it down now for as much damage as possible. Dane can now clear the entire board with a Hellfire, I guess. And then follow it up with the Molten Giant, which might be appealing this turn.
Yeah, I don't mind that. You could also just Dark Bomb.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But then he is receiving 2 more damage anyways. So it's kind of like at 1 health difference, he uses Hellfire and saves Dark Bomb. But I guess he also keeps his Twilight Drake this way too, right? Because Hellfire would kill off his Drake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Takes marginally more damage, but he's not dead. Like, there's no double kill command coming down this turn from Ant, so Dane knew it was safe to do that, and he's got the Healbot to follow up with next turn, but he's not going to be able to play that this turn if he plays this Owl.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like, oh man, is the Owl being 3 mana like really relevant here? And maybe. I guess because if he uses Mortal Coil, it technically isn't, because then he just plays Ancient Watcher anyways. And yeah, the Mortal Coil does allow him to draw into the Sun Fury Protector.
Does Dane need to deal with the Mad Scientist here? Is what I'm wondering about. Double kill command is possible next turn, but with no beast on the board, that's only 6 damage, so that's 8 with the Scientist. I don't know if I mind he's going face. Yeah. I'm not sure about that.
Oh man, I mean, Hunter's so close to killing, so I can totally understand the reason why he feels that way. It's just, it feels like, you know what it is? Dane says that if I can ever convincingly swing the board 1 turn, like if he drew Sun Fury Protector, the game was over anyways, because then he just faceless the Molten Giant and then go face. But in this scenario, it's tough.
Yeah, I guess he's just trying to control the board. I was thinking Animal Companion Huffer into kill command was the most damage Ant could have come up with last turn, and it was 9. So I guess that plus the Scientist would have been lethal. So okay, I don't mind the trade as much now when I think about it. But getting the Owl back into hand, it's going to be quite expensive. But nice way of just dealing with the high main immediately.
Right. Your opponent did not deal any damage to you, so you're kind of locked in the same position as the previous turn. And this way, your opponent can't say Owl past your Sludge Belcher, although I don't know. I mean, I really like the idea of putting Hunter on the clock here, because now Dane's traded twice, so he's very consistent with his line. It's just that, if you play like Sludge Belcher, go face, you actually put like a lot of pressure onto your opponent, and you end up having a way to win, because it seems like Dane's just kind of playing keep away, and Hunter's just getting closer and closer, looming in for a kill.
Yeah, I guess he's just leaning on this anti-kill button, just hoping to stabilize the board first, and then use that to really get back into the game. Unfortunately, if Ant plays the Lothar this turn, I don't think Dane can deal with it.
Yeah, he would have to kind of be in that same position of playing something to stall.
And
then Ant gets really close for a victory.
Oh, wow, okay. I'm going to go with a companion instead. Gets Misha this time, which is... It's fine. It's not pushing the damage that I'm sure Ant wanted to push with Huffer, but...
Yeah,
it's
more
a board.
stats. It's perfectly fine. Siphon Soul, pretty important in this position. And I mean, so far, everything is working out really nicely for Dane, so it's all about whether or not Ant can close from this spot. And double Pilot Shredder is kind of hard to deal with. So how will Dane deal with this now? Or is he going to deal with it at all? Finally, he'll start hitting his opponent, perhaps, with playing Sludge Belcher. Ooh, nice pickup for Dane.
Yeah, that's not bad at all, especially played with the antique heal bot. He can put himself back up to 19 and protect his face from even a silence. Defender of Argus is really strong here.
Yeah, without that Argus, Dane would have to play Sludge Belcher to offset the Pilot Shredder damage, but now the Argus is so valuable. There is also a justification for Argus Faceless Manipulator, I think, if you want to like capitalize on maximum defense. Or even just Defender of Argus Sludge Belcher. But I think Dane values staying alive over everything else, and he does need to he needs to play this TQ bot at some point anyways, so might as well get it out of his...
Again, it's thinking about the break point. It's thinking about the maximum potential damage Ant can deal, and the confidence of doing that in a meta that is less familiar is going to be much lower, and therefore I can see Dane being quite keen to get his health total up as quickly as possible. This is just a very nice play.
A little understated here for Ant, so that's definitely a low roll in this position. Was looking for like a Dial of Alpha, Flame Tongue Totem, or Charger to finish off this Ancient Watcher. But low Theb will complicate things, because now Dane can't easily use spells to efficiently clear. Jiraxis, that could be huge later on, but this Sludge Belcher Face Manipulator, I think, is where Dane turns the corner. And had his chance to pressure, but Dane being very patient ends up paying off really well for him.
Yeah, that's a really stable board. There's no way Ant is getting through that anytime soon.
Love it. Very solid play so far. That's end up paying off huge dividends. And now Ant has no beast energy. This kill command can't officially get past. And the Sludge Belcher just lines up so perfectly for Shredder.
Belcher sort of acting as the OG Void Lord here. The sticky minion that the more mid-rangey minions like the Hunter, if they're not already on the board, they can just never get past.
It's true. Sludge Belcher was very much like Void Lord for half the cost. Super problematic to get through. Sludge Belcher wouldn't be nearly as amazing in modern Hearthstone, like as the years progress, mainly because there's so many good 5/5 that come out, like, you know, Emperor Thor's. But definitely like a precursor to Void Lord, as you were mentioning.
Well, at least Ant's health total is looking good.
I'm actually like kind of okay with like life tapping and like playing Hellfire to clear the board, you know.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Looks like Dane might favor just playing straight up tempo, because Hellfire kills his own board partially, and he could just double trade into minions anyways.
Yeah.
I think he's just in a good spot no matter what he does.
I think as long as Dane keeps his health above 12 and plays around Web Spinner, Double Kill Command, Hero Power, then his health is fine. It doesn't matter how low he goes.
That's true. Hellfire does put him in range of Double Kill Command, so that's probably a reason against it then.
But like putting himself just a little bit lower is fine, because he's got the Jiraxis to go up to 15, which I imagine he'll want to play sooner rather than later.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. Dane's so far ahead at this point that he has to make sure to prevent Waves from losing. So I like that he's hedging against everything, trying to say, like, in the event where I get unfortunate and I need as every single life point total, I'm not going to life tap. Of course, the weakness of this position is that his post-Jiraxis hand is very bad. It's Ancient Watcher and a single copy of AoE.
Yeah, he could do with drawing another Argus or a Sun Fury Protector or something, so that he's got a way of stabilizing the board after Jiraxis. Though this Freezing Trap is, frankly, fine for Dane. He's able to just replay the Belcher. It's like he's just healed it back up again.
Wow. Dane wants to trade with the Mountain Giant here. He's being extra cautious.
Do you know what? At this stage in the game, I'm fine with that. Ant is so low on cards remaining. Dane's just running out of stuff, and that should be a pretty consistent way of winning from here.
Yeah, I mean, he already saw one kill command, so it does feel like he's being super safe. But in the event, I think of his opponent having a silence past this Sludge Belcher and then pushing extra damage, he wants to be super duper safe. But with 2 cards, there's not really much that Ant can do in this spot here.
Yeah, and with the second kill command being played, Dane now knows just how safe he is. And gonna hold on to that Knife Juggler, I guess, for the potential of getting a Juggler into Unleash, or Juggler when trading in the Death Rattle and getting some knives there. But either way, it's just not going to be enough.
Yep. It's good recognition from Dane to see that he doesn't even need like any cards off his hero power. In fact, his hero power actively works against him. There's no need to play Ancient Watcher because that adds another Unleash the Houndsdog.
Yeah.
That being said, Ant still got very close to this game because I'm pretty sure Drax is just going to lock everything up here, unless I'm missing something. Unless Ant has just like the most weirdly timed Harrison Jones in the world.
Yeah, the only downside for Dane here is that he doesn't have any taunts to back up his Jiraxis. So back down to 15 again. I am expecting Dane to just keep trading, especially now his maximum health is 15 and Ant has 5. Oh, okay. Never mind.
All right, well, that is a whiff. Sludge Belcher is not going to end the game, although it does stall for a little bit.
Yeah, not quite, because the Jiraxis weapon is able to
yeah, and I mean double hellfire already ends, but in Ant's mind, you know, what you gotta like look at how everything goes through. And I guess the weapon being available for Jiraxis just means he can't get through, unfortunately. So Dane is going to lock this up 3-1 and wrap up the series with a 2-0 score against some of Hearthstone's best. And I think it just goes to show you, man, that you can't sleep on some of these guys who really have explored a lot of the format of WoW throughout the years. And that, you know, Hearthstone has that any given Sunday thing. You know, Dane definitely can hang with these guys. And I'm sure all of his fans are super excited to see him do this well so far.
And we were both saying this at the start of the broadcast. And Dane is just, because he is primarily a WoW player, he's essentially in a really good spot coming into this tournament compared to the players that only play standard and are now sort of having to, you know, go back, do their research, remind themselves what the cards were that existed back then. Dane is used to it. This is his territory, and he's going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of like worried for a while, like, oh, is he giving up too much damage? Is he like giving Hunter too much time to draw? But he recognized the tools in his hands and like understood the range of what his opponents could do. Ant was on a very few cards, and even then, Hunter doesn't have nearly as good. I mean, their tools have stayed the same throughout the year. You know, it's like basically just kill command and weapons and chargers. And so he was playing around every single possibility, like Wolf Riders, silences, kill commands, animal companions. And that health difference ended up making a huge impact because he ended the game, at like 5 health or something. So imagine if kill command was targeted at face instead, and he didn't budget his health correctly. He could have let that one slip through. Yeah. Even though Hunter pretty much had a decent curve outside of a turn 1 play. So.
And there you go. There is the overall score. So Dane now 2-0 in this tournament, and it's no real surprise. Again, he's got a big advantage coming in. I think he's going to do very, very well over the coming weeks.
Yeah, so we'll see if Dane can keep up this momentum and if he's going to bust out the Sneasel Shredders for the later weeks. In the meantime, we have Dane on the line for a quick word on his victory. So Dane, how are you feeling right now so far? You're up 2-0. You're looking good.
Pretty good. Did you see the high rolls I had in my mulligan? Did you see that? Two clerics in the second game, and two quartermasters. I felt a little bit dirty. I'm gonna go shower after this interview.
Yeah, a nice little hot bath. I mean, it happened so fast that we barely able to see it. You were blazing through it. But let's talk about the 1 or 2 games you did get to play, Hearthstone, or your opponent did rather. How'd you feel about going to this week, having GVG and Nax Ramus at your disposal compared to the previous week?
Yeah, it's the first time I got to Legend was around GVG, like the area of that time. I was using Handlock, so I just brought all the decks that I felt really comfortable with playing back then. And yeah, it seems to be working out. The more cards unlocked though, I've got some ideas ready to go. Week 5, I think will be my favorite one. Week 5, and if I get through to week 6, I've got a corker for you. I'm not going to tell you what it is though.
Wow.
Sure, yeah. Obviously, you don't want to spoil it. Your opponents could be scouting it, and I do think that this is really cool because other players, they have a lot of things they're juggling. They're competing in HCT, they're going to tour stops, and we all know you as our lovable wild YouTuber and streamer, and also you've been casting some recently. So what's the dynamic like competing compared to your usual content creation?
Well, I'm coming in as the worst player into the tournament, right? If you've ever seen me stream, I make about 1,000 misplays in one game, so I'm surprised I'm actually winning at the moment. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, and I'm a bit sweating at the minute. I don't like this this nervous environment I got on the go. It was more nervous than casting. Yeah. It was worse than casting. I felt a bit more relaxed when I was casting. This is nerve-wracking. Everyone's watching. Is he going to make a mistake? Yeah, he is.
I know.
I guess it's even more difficult for you because you are considered the wild player of the group. But why the wild format isn't quite the same as like Just Nax and GVG, or Just Nax GVG and like BRM next week, etc. So do you think that your advantage gets bigger as we introduce more expansions into the mix?
No, I don't think so. I play really bad decks, but I play against really good decks on the ladder, so I know how it works. But I think everyone in the tournament's got an advantage over me, except this is the first time I've ever played in a tournament, so the nerves will probably kick in at some point, I think, and I'll make a few mistakes.
Oh, you'll get
I don't think I've got an advantage.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Corinne. Sorry.
Oh no! I thought you were finished up there. Apologies for.
Oh no, there's a delay.
Yeah, there's a slight delay. Apologies. So congratulations to victory, man. You kind of said that you weren't sure if you're going to make it to week 6. Well, the top 4 advanced to the finals, so don't worry, man. You're off to a good start. You have a couple of you have a margin for error if you want to experiment in the coming weeks. I think a lot of your fans are really happy for you, and congratulations to victory. We'll see you next week.
See you later. Cheers.
All right, so Dane able to effectively set up a wall of cheat, a wall of taunts rather, and that is going to lock out Anna of the series 3-1, and that is going to bring us to the halfway point of the day. We have 2 more matches for you guys. Coming up next should be JustSayin from Temple Storm up against Orange from Alliance. And that's going to be kind of a match of modern HCT threats and contenders. So we'll take a break for a few minutes, and when we come back, Falcone and I will walk you through the second half of week 2 here at the History of Hearthstone.
Greeting, traveler.
Change your mind.
You require my assistance? gonna be rich.
I have no time for games.
Inferno! Require my assistance? Who am I?
Let me change your mind.
Welcome back, everyone, to the History of Hearthstone. Hope you enjoyed that brief little break. I know I certainly did. We were going for quite some time to use the restroom. If you guys are just catching up with us, let's go ahead and break down what happened. We had Jackie versus Neriah to start things off. Neriah took things pretty convincingly with a nice control lineup. And then Dane doing the same thing, really. He kind of had a really powerful mid-range and control pre-start and then finished off with a handlock victory. So the aggro not really working out for Ant. We'll see if Saiyan or Orange can bring something interesting to the table, or maybe just kind of reaffirm what we're thinking, which is control seems to be pretty decent now that a lot of those combo burst options have been nuked, with Oil Rogue losing its burst and Combo Druid kind of getting gimped. So we'll see what happens.
All sorts of the nerfs actually covered, I think, the aggressive decks more than the control decks in the past. Abusive Sergeant, Knife Juggler, Leponome, you know, there's actually really a lot when you think about it. You mentioned
good point.
before with Dane winning that a lot of the players in this tournament are actually trying to juggle a lot of current standard alongside, like, remembering this past meta, and JustSayin and Orange are both big examples of that type of player. They were both just at DreamHack Tour in the last week, and they've both got other upcoming tournaments over, I think, even the next few days. So they are equally disadvantaged, I think, in that respect.
I would assume so. In fact, I think Orange is playing live from China right now.
Wow.
He's at the Titanar Invitational along with a few other players. I think Saiyin's actually there too, so they might both be playing from China. We're not sure if we can get their webcams. Apologies, guys, if that's the case. But it is live as live can be with a delay. We are on a delay, so if you guys are hearing this, this is from the past. But we have a lineup here of Mage, Paladin, Hunter, and Warlock up against Orange, who has Rogue, Mage, Priest, and Warlock. With the Warlocks being banned, that's just kind of interesting that Warlock being banned, because we've seen basically different bans every single series, and I think it's a closed deckless format, meaning that they don't know what each other is playing exactly here. So I'm curious how this is going to work out for either of these players, because we've seen Rogue being banned, we've seen Mage being banned.
We've seen Handlock being very successful though, both for Neriah and also for Dane. So it's not too surprising that we're seeing Warlocks banned. As JustSayin is once again playing Mech Mage. This time, although his curve sort of fixed itself in the first few turns, Sayin gets to start with Mana Worm into Chugger or Unstable Portal. It's a very strong hand. Orange also has a strong looking hand. He's got Zombie Chow into Dark Cultist on turn 3.
Yeah, Zombie Chow is so critical here, just to force Sayin to fight without his 1-mana minion usually. Like, it can trade pretty evenly against it. And you just want to stall so that Dark Cultist Pilot Shredder can be your heavy hitting turns. Ooh, that's another big pickup here for Orange as well, just so that he can establish better tempo and make sure Mech Mage can't do too much here.
Against the Mage, he just throws it out on the board, I think, without a doubt. Like you mentioned earlier, the Shrinkmeister with Cabal Shadow Priest combo is something that priests consider against the heavier decks, the control-y decks. They've stolen a good few Ysera, I think, back in its time.
Yeah.
But I do like you said, developing the tempo here from Orange. He disagrees though. He's going to actually try and play a more slow, more I guess control-y game.
Yeah, I think, let's see. So I guess what he doesn't want is Zombie Chow to have an easy and convenient trade. Because if his opponent plays any like Frost Bowl or something, he can just trade really easily. Flame Cannon is also a threat.
That's true, but this way, Orange is potentially sacrificing the entire board, because now if Frostbolt or Flame Cannon's played, the Mana Worm still survives, and the Priest doesn't have a way of pinging the Mana Worm off, so it's just going to continue to rain havoc for the next couple of turns.
Flame Cannon is the ultimate punish here, right? It's just, there's just no way that you ever want your Mana Worm to die, at least easily. You force your opponent to Pyromancer it. And now Orange doesn't have a way to deal with the Mana Worm, except for, hope this opponent can't answer this Dark Cultist. But it's like, say, a second Flame Cannon came out. That is putting Orange in a really bad position.
Even Frostbolt coin ping, right? Like, Sayin has a bunch of ways in his deck of dealing with this 3/4 and allowing the Mana Worm to continue doing its thing. There's no Spirit Lash back in the Naxxramas GVG days. Sayin going to start with Unstable Portal. Of course, he can get minions from any expansion with that.
Yeah, I know some people are kind of joking, but we do, in the chat when they're like, oh man, this guy's like cheating. But, we do allow them to play with whatever cards that are generated off of random effects that are from other expansions. And Cave Hydra here, I wonder how good it actually can be. If your opponent can keep that alive, I mean, that's just 2 damage AoE on the board against Priest, which happens to line up really well that are things that are not Pilot Shredder.
Yeah, it's not great against, like you said, just the Piloted Shredder board, but I get the feeling it might be around for quite some time, especially with Goblin Blast Mage getting its effect and 3 going into the Shredder. Snow Chugger is able to clear up the 2/2, and Sayin is healthily ahead on the board. This is the worst we've seen a Priest doing, I think. All day. Priests have been dominating so far.
Yeah, and I kind of have to wonder if Orange had this Shrinkmeister down a little bit earlier, if things would progress the way they have. However, Orange still has a pretty decent way to enter this board. He's got Shadow Word Death, and the Shrinkmeister will contest anything that's on the board immediately. I think he just needs to reduce the amount of pressure onto the board, because Mech Mage is starting to snowball. They're getting damage every single turn. And you only can answer one thing per turn until you get to Light Bomb stage. And even then, Light Bomb may not answer everything.
Yeah, it is worth noting that Light Bomb exists, though, and that Orange will have ways later on in the game to grapple the board back off of JustSayin. But it's also worth considering, we did see in his mulligan, he does run Archmage and Tinnitus, which means he will have an alternate win condition, even if he does lose the board later on. So I think Sayin is in a very healthy spot here.
Yeah, Antonius was really good with spare parts, so Tinkertown Technician and the
Mech
Clockwork
Yeti.
Gnome.
Yeah, that too.
Important. This is an instance where we're kind of talking about how Light Bomb doesn't clear everything. It, in fact, may even keep the power on the board relatively similar depending on what comes out of the Pilot Shredder. Tough position here for Orange.
Again, showing the strength of Piloted Shredder. Piloted Shredder has been compared to the the Glass Knight has been compared to the Piloted Shredder a lot. And the Glass Knight has seen a lot of play in recent tournaments. And this is exactly why. Divine Shield or Death Rattle just allows a minion to be so sticky and hard to clear. But yeah, it really, the control decks really suffer as a result.
It looks like Saiyan has no reason not to extend onto the board completely here. Psychic Scream is not available in this format. That is the best turn 7 play. Instead, we have the other best turn 7 play, which is Dr. Boom, and I think that might be Orange's best spot here. I don't think a board of Northshire Clerics can fight back. He could draw with the Clerics.
Ooh, I don't mind that so much. But then what's he trying to draw into? Again, the Arcanite and Circle?
Arcanite Circle or Pyromancer Holy Nova could help answer most of this.
Yeah. He wouldn't have the mana to play both Clerics and Hero Power and Arcanite and Circle this turn, so that's, I guess, a slightly awkward, but he can set up for next turn. I think I prefer Dr. Boom. It's just a more consistently good play, though Orange is still very much on the back foot. A little bit late, Mech Warper.
Yep, the nice thing about this Tarn Warrior is it actually does have the Enrage effect. Or, sorry, the Wild Damaged effect. And now Saiyan is just going to press in, so that way if he ever draws like a Frostbolt or a Fireball in the next couple turns, he still should be able to close the game here. Okay, Powered Shield. Could generate some magic here for Orange. Just needs to find, I think, pretty much just Holy Nova is out here in this position. Potentially Light Bomb could also help save him.
Holy Nova is really good, actually. I hadn't thought of about that. I was just thinking about how, yeah, the Priest doesn't have Psychic Stream, doesn't have Dragonfire Potion either. That wasn't a much later expansion. Velen's Chosen not going to do all that much at all.
Yeah, he needs these boom bots to deliver big. He needs one of the boom bots to essentially kill off like a 3/4 minion. Ooh,
oh, that's hard.
Not good. I think Orange has to go for a Northshire Cleric. Oh, Hail Mary. But one card won't do anything, I think, because he has 4 mana remaining.
Yeah. Again, he still doesn't have the mana to play both Clerics and Hero Power and then Arcanite Circle. He's just still one off managing to do that. And that's if, the 2 perfect draws came out next turn. So,
Death Lord could be a way he gets out of here. Oh,
okay. Good call. Good call. And there's the Holy Nova.
And there you go.
Saiyan is going to be one off lethal, but Fireball's definitely going to finish the job. And Mech Mage
the original Mech
day.
Mage. Top. Oh, gosh. Oh, man. Okay. Nostalgia trip's over. I think we got exactly what we expected from the next game.
I just love Mech Mage so much. I think I love it an unhealthy amount. I remember getting my Golden Mage with it, and
get out.
Such a fun deck. Okay.
Get out.
Fair enough.
No, it's okay. You can stay. Well, first of all, I don't want to steal it. But second of all, I do just see what you mean. Like, Mech Mage was kind of the first emerging Tempo Mage builds. Sure, there were like Tempo Mage builds before that, but it just wasn't really as good because you got so many good tools. Like, you got early spare parts for your Mana Worms with really good board opportunities like Goblin Blast Mage, and then you had Unstable Portal and Flame Cannon and some really nice early game tempo opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's when Tempo Mage first broke out, and I think that's what caused a lot of people to love it, because some people love really fast, crazy decks, and you got just enough of that with Mech Mage with some of those randomness and these really big opening hands that sometimes scaled you into huge snowball victories by turn 4, turn
It was the first big aggro mage deck. I mean, we've still got aggro mage around nowadays, but back then, before Flamewaker came out, mech mage was, I guess, the origin of that archetype. And the fact that it still lives on to this day speaks a lot for just the strength of mage.
That's right. Take a look at some of the nerfed cards. Mage did not directly get affected by some of these nerfs, but some of the neutrals probably could have impacted it. The biggest nerf set, in my opinion, was to Druid, considering that they lost so many valuable tools. Warrior took also a pretty significant hit with Fire War Axe and Execute, but Druid has like 6 cards. I think it's got 5 on the screen alone. Keeper of the Grove, Force of Nature, Ancient of Lore, Innervate. Well, I guess no one's playing Murlocs, so it's 4. Still a very significant amount of nerfs, and I don't think we're going to see much Druid today. I don't think we'll see any Shaman either. But we have seen most of the other classes, if not all of them.
We'll see a lot more Shaman, I think, next week when it comes to Tunnel Trog, Totem Golem territory. But you're right, Druid, one of the reasons Druid was always so strong is because the base set was so good. And bit by bit, the base set cards like Force of Nature, the cards we saw just then, have been nerfed. And it's now, without the strength of the expansion cards, like Jade Idols, Oaken Summons, cards like that, Druid isn't quite what it used to be. However, the decks we are seeing are still quite strong indeed, and Orange now going to be queuing his Oil Rogue by the looks of things.
Yeah, Oil Rogue, still waiting to be convinced whether it's actually really good or if it's just a significantly gimped version of it was before. But we'll go ahead and wait to see what happens. I think the big difference between what the Oil Rogue from what Jackie had versus what Orange has. Orange actually has early game plays. He's got Questing Adventure, Edward Van Cleave, really big growing minions that Paladin can't answer easily without quality.
Yeah, Edwin and Questing, they've been strong for a very long time now. They still come in and out of the meta. Well, Edwin's always good. Questing sort of hops in and hops out. But the Paladin starting board, Chow into Creeper, Orange's Dagger isn't good enough to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, it's not good enough to deal with it for now, but the important thing is whether or not Paladin can answer a big minion that comes out of the rogue, because it's clear that Orange may not be playing a long-term game plan. He's got big swings with Edwin and Questing Adventure, and then also has Lothep to potentially just push damage to seal the deal. And then in the worst case scenario, Azure Drake draws a card to help potentially draw like an Eviscerate kill or other ways to make sure to get past what's on the board.
We've spoken a little bit about the fan of the Blade Flurry nerf throughout this broadcast so far, but I think this turn is another illustration of it. On 3 mana in the past, Orange would have been able to play Deadly Poison, swing into the Haunted Creeper, and then play Blade Flurry, clearing the board and dealing some face damage. But that was a really heavy nerf to hit that card. And Orange doesn't have a way of removing this as a result.
At least not now. The good thing is the Zombie Chows do allow him to have a lot of time. So if he plays... Oh man, I don't know if he wants to use the coin in this position. Oh, it's so weak. Because then you have nothing really next turn. You just have like a tempo Van Cleave. I think just straight up Deadly Poison kills off the Zombie Chow. Just stall for time.
It's such a difficult balancing act because Edwin this turn is potentially the only way Orange gets something on the board that can stick around for a bit. So I do think it's the right call, but next turn is potentially going to be quite weak as a result. If Orange can draw an Eviscerate or a Sap next turn, maybe play Questing, Preparation, and then a spell to put another minion down and then curve into the 5-drops, maybe he's got a shot. And yeah, Orange does draw the Eviscerate. But it's not looking as good now because Sayin doesn't really have anything on the board worth casting Eviscerate on.
At the same time, he's not under a lot of pressure. I do think that a Quartermaster would be bad news, but it's not the worst position in the world considering that he does have like Drake, prep, eviscerate, kill the 3/3.
That's true.
And I don't know if questing venture is good enough in this position because it just dies to true silver champion.
Yeah, that's one of the big issues. You're right. I think playing it slow is better. Does Orange ever just drop it as a 2/2 and then pass?
That's interesting. Forcing your opponent to try to address the questing adventure as a potential threat. The thing is, though, questing adventure just scales so well into the late game because the more you acquire cards, the bigger you can create the threat. And then Orange taking it slow might even not make him play very tempo oriented if Saiyan doesn't develop much here. He might, if Saiyan just plays like Knife Juggler and a minion, Orange may just take a slower approach even with Sludge Belcher. We'll see, because he doesn't want his minion to just die for free easily for the weapons. In fact, neither player really wants their weapons to get value. Saiyan doesn't want Orange to get deadly poison value. Orange doesn't want true silver value.
Right.
Oh boy, I forgot about this.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well, questing into Conceal is very powerful. Well, almost everything in this rogue deck into Conceal is powerful.
Yeah.
Auctioneer into Conceal is great.
Yeah, so this Conceal is so insane with questing adventure later on if your opponent doesn't have equality. You even have ridiculous plays like questing adventure, Loatheb, prep, Conceal, that kind of thing. You know, stop the equality consecration. I'm really starting to be a believer in the rogue. We start assembling a hand. The big thing was that Orange was given a lot of time, and that's where Zombie Chow definitely has its drawback because it just gave Orange essentially 10 life. Granted that it fought for the board pretty well, but it's like, you know, Orange could be at what, 15?
Right. Saiyan also hasn't drawn not Call to Arms, whoops, Muster for Battle or Quartermaster yet. So he's not actually able to cultivate this big board of his own. The Haunted Creeper Knife Juggler combo could do some damage soon, but Orange actually has to have a minion on the board for that to work.
If only we had enough mana for Azure Drake Eviscerate, I think that'd be really nice and clean for Orange. Other than that, though, it seems like he just has to improve the quality of his hand. Auctioneer would open things up significantly as well. So I think that's another reason maybe to play the Azure Drake. The closer we get to Auctioneer, the faster we can Auctioneer Conceal prep plays.
He could prep out the Eviscerate if he really wanted to deal with the Sludge Belcher, but I kind of like holding it back for the Auctioneer, as you just said.
The scariest thing is what happens if your opponent plays Dr. Boom on 7. How do you answer it? Are you playing it too slow? But Orange takes his chances. Saiyan has True Silver directly answer the Drake, and then he continues to threaten with Quartermaster, lines the Tyrion really nicely. This is just standard mid-range play, and it's all up to the rogue to not beat itself.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Okay, it's go time.
That Azure Drake play ends up paying off huge dividends for Orange. See this Conceal, what it gets. Preparation, Sap, I think is the best 2-card combination. Orange draws a second Auctioneer, so he could justify holding on to this prep because he's not going to be stranded if it ends up dying here with an equality play.
Yeah, I almost feel like playing the prep now is too much of a risk because he may not draw anything worth playing, and then he's got to cast the Eviscerate, sort of. Doesn't really have anything worth hitting with it. However, he might just be dead soon, so there is an argument for playing.
The thing about Eviscerate in this position is exactly what you said, about as Saiyan picks up the equality, but there's no consecration. The thing about it, oh yeah, oh wow, yeah, quality juggling. I like that. You're only damaging your Belcher a little bit.
Yeah, and he only gets 1 juggle as well because he'll only have the mana to play the hero power. He can't trade in a Haunted Creeper still.
Yeah, that's a 50-50, and you use one of your best tools.
Whilst weakening the Belcher, as you said.
So good, but if your Tyrion gets sapped, what do you do in that position?
So there was no Valspine Slayer in Rogue back then, so something like Dr. Boom is difficult to deal with, but Tyrion, as you said, can be sapped, and that is a huge tempo loss for the Paladin, and one of the reasons Sap was such a good card back then.
Right, and if only Saiyan was able to develop the Knife Juggler a little bit earlier, he would get multiple juggles. But Saiyan's going to just go with his best tool available, which is Tyrion Forward Ring. And if there's no stat for Orange, Saiyan might just pressure for the win. He is so pessimistic about chances of Tyrion doing anything that he even doesn't swing with the True Silver Champion. Recognize that he might need it later on. Orange looking for sap to start things off. Tinker Sharp Sword Oil.
Well, I guess at least it's an extra cycle if Orange needs it. Maybe it can be that one more cycle that gets him to the sap. Cold Blood is helpful too for the same reason. Yeah, Fan of Knives would be huge here. Conceal just doesn't do enough.
Yeah, it has to be Fan specifically in this scenario. And Orange is going to dig deeper with maybe a preparation into Fan. Oh, one card off.
Oh, this is just heartbreaking for Orange as he drops the concede. And Saiyan takes his second win of the series with his second more aggressive deck. Tempo Mage, Mech Mage and Midrange Paladin.
Right.
Strong performances.
I mean, I feel like Rogue was one turn away from being able to flip the position and maybe pressured the Paladin for victory, but man, Saiyan just barely able to get over the hump there, because it felt like with that hand in Rogue and the limited card resources from the Paladin, that either Saiyan would be reliant on Tyrion dying, getting Ashbringer, or just hoping that Rogue drew dead, which is kind of a combination of both there. I think Orange had some really good tools, but just a little bit too awkward, not enough stabilization tools. And that's why in Goblins versus Gnomes specifically, Rogue started going really heavy on the 5-mana minions because they needed survivability with Sludge Belcher and Antique Healbot. You saw a lot of Rogues run more 5-mana minions than 4-mana for a while because of that exact scenario. It's like they just needed a little bit more time, just a little bit more stall.
Yeah, it's true. I have to admit, I'm a little bit surprised that we're seeing so much Rogue today. I do think the Blade Flurry nerf did hit the class really hard, or hit that specific archetype really hard. Oil Rogue is just simply not as strong without the Blade Flurry, and Orange might struggle to get a win with this deck in the entire series.
Well, especially if Saiyans playing Face Hunter or something.
Yeah.
I imagine that Midrange Hunter is going to come out here, considering that it's just very versatile. And with the High Main Dr. Boom, that all but confirms it. Face Hunter also got nerfs, like you mentioned, so much with almost every card, like Leper Gnome, Abusive Sergeant, Unleash the Hounds, like everything got changed about that deck.
Yeah.
So it's just nowhere near as good. Undertaker, of course.
But Orange is going to give the Mech Mage a go this time around. Not drawing a 1-drop, but his curve gets pretty good after the first turn. Saiyan, however, he's got 2 1-drops and Glaive Zuka. That was such a strong card back in the day.
Okay. This is actually a very good recovery hand from Orange if he wants to pass. Because then he can Mech Warper, Clockwork Gnome, and a Neutron, guarantee a Mech Stick for the Tinkertown, or just play Pilot Shredder. So while this may look like, wow, Saiyan's just going to curve out and destroy the Mech Mage, Orange does have some options available if he chooses to take a more passive route.
I'm trying to work out if there's any reason to just play out the Clockwork Gnome or play out a Neutron or something. It'd be really weak to the Glaive Zuka, as we can see, if you played one of those cards now, but...
The thing is, a Neutron by itself doesn't accomplish much, but what Neutron is really good at doing is protecting the rest of your board. Oh
wow. Gonna just go for the Mech Warper and the Clockwork Gnome immediately.
Oh, this is going to hurt so bad.
Yeah, again, we can see the Glaive Zuka. We know exactly what's about to happen. It's going to hit into the Clockwork Gnome, buff up the Mech Warper, and Orange now doesn't have anything.
He's got another Zombie Chow.
Yeah, that's good news for Saiyan, who's already in a good spot in his 2-0 lead.
Yeah, I kind of want to get that other Zombie Chow out. There's no coin for Houndmaster play available in this spot, and you have a way to fill out your curve with Web Spinner Hero Power. And what's important is that you fight for the board against Mech Mage so that they can't get any mech synergy with Goblin Blast Mage or Tinkertown Technician. So I like this play from Saiyan, and now Orange is stranded. A Neutron plus Whirling Blades is nice, but it looks like he might want to just Hero Power here.
Yeah, it's so weak against the weapon still. It's the issue. I don't mind the hero power. Again, it's a shame he doesn't have a 1-mana minion to play out onto the board. Even a mana worm, although it would just die, at least it's doing something. It's chipping away the damage, getting rid of the weapon.
But this is huge for Orange. He sees Saiyan basically has the weakest possible turn 3 that involves playing a minion, which is Web Spinner. That's just essentially Novice Engineer or like a bad loot hoarder. So Orange has opportunity to develop this Pilot Shredder finally, and actually will be ahead on board. And then Tinkertown Technician plus Annoyatron is surprisingly a really good combo against Hunter that doesn't have Sludge Belcher. So things might start turning around here for Orange if this Pilot Shredder can come up with something really nice here.
Instant snap play of the Hellmaster that turn for Saiyan though, and now the weapon can just dispatch the 2/2, and Saiyan's still ahead. Knuckles for Saiyan is interesting. Mean Streets of Gadget-san, Hunter Legendary there.
That was a good call. I didn't even remember what expansion he was. You pull that one immediately.
Yeah, I don't know. The boxing gloves just for some reason remind me.
Oh yeah, the brass knuckles, the gangs, grimy goons.
And now Orange's turn isn't too bad here. If he wants to get the Tinkertown buff, he can play it with Annoyatron, or he could just play Mad Scientist, Annoyatron, and the Whirling Blades. I don't mind that. Getting a secret out is potentially a way of gaining some tempo and grappling the board back from JustSayin.
So if you play Annoyatron and Whirling Blades, let's assume in the best case scenario your opponent double trades. That means you want a hero power next turn, which means you can't play Tinkertown Technician. You're stuck playing Annoyatron anyways. That's a little tough.
Yeah. That's true.
That is a little tough. If you had the ability to guarantee that Tinkertown Technician landed and you can hero power next turn, I would 100% love this play. But instead, I do think that this is his best available play. It's just tough because it seems like this Technician is getting stranded every single turn. I mean, he might just play it for tempo on the board because it is stronger than Annoyatron. It might come down to that. I do think that a big valuable thing will come down to the secret as well.
Right, and that's exactly it. It's just like Orange is finding 3 mana from nowhere by playing the Mad Scientist next turn and really getting a good push this turn. The fact that no trades happen at all means that, firstly, the Tinkertown Technician was playable immediately.
Yeah.
And secondly, Spider Tank pickup really does fix this curve.
Ooh, versing switch.
That's really good against Sludge Belcher. The switch, trade, and ping.
Yeah, I love it. Otherwise, Sludge Belcher continues to dominate the board.
This could be the start of the comeback from Orange.
Well, he's got Dr. Boom lined up, and Sand has no way to answer it, at least from his hand. His best play this turn is Knuckles. What on earth? Okay. Web Spinner Knuckles.
Knuckles has never seen any competitive play, at least to my knowledge. So it's not the best card to have in hand ready to go. There's no way of buffing it either.
Yeah, Knuckles just seems so weak. I guess if I'm saying his best available way to answer the board is things like this Unleash the Hounds Web Spinner play. So if you're Orange, how do you address a board this wide? You need to make sure that you don't take too much damage, and you have, what, 4, 6, and 12 damage they're staring at? Or just, 12 damage with the hero power. So it's like, gotta be careful, man. It's too much life.
I think he just has to play out Dr. Boom, though. Like, there isn't really anything better apart from... Well, he could play the Annoyatron to defend his life total, but he's not getting anywhere with that play. The Annoyatron's not really dealing with many of these minions.
There is the Zombie Chow. The Zombie Chow does give Orange some pseudo time here because, it does restore 5 health. But that's assuming that, Zombie Chow is also dealing damage, so it kind of offsets its own downside, so to speak.
If Orange trades away the Hellmaster, then it would take precisely double kill command, or again, Animal Companion into a kill command for lethal. Animal Companion into Huffer into kill command for lethal. So I do like this play. I think it's safe enough. Saiyan does pick up the Companion, though. Oh, yeah, that's as good as Huffer.
Oh,
that'll do it.
Geez. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 16, 18 damage. Oh no, he can't hero power.
Oh yeah, okay.
Also,
Good
it could be
spell.
counter spell. Or should we just
Animal
play
Companion was just play, yeah. It must be Mirror Entity.
Yep. You're right.
So the question for Saiyan now is, does he have to deal with this Dr. Boom? Or can he afford to push all of this into the face and almost have a guaranteed win in a few turns?
Let your opponent clean it up. The zombie chat was paid for itself many times over, by the way. It's been staying alive. So
Yeah.
Antonius.
Not much good with no spells in the hand.
That being said, this is a life total that you can work with if you can turn the corner for one turn. The only problem is that Sand has that kill command. But
What to do?
if Orange can figure out a way to minimize damage here, hide behind a Neutron, have these boom bots maximize their damage, maybe even hit face with boom in the best case scenario. Okay. Other dog bites the dust here, perhaps.
Boombot into the Leok for 4 would be really good for Orange.
The only way Orange can win is if, I think, Leok bites the dust here. And then you hide behind a Neutron, ping the web spinner, go face. I mean, that still might be the play, by the way. Like, you know, Orange might just, even if this Boombot misses, it looks like he's gonna take the safe route here. And truth be told, it's just a bad situation no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, a Neutron does look pretty good because Saiyan would have to trade in all 3 minions. According to the board.
Orange played so fast, or rather, he didn't play fast enough.
Oh.
That ended up pinging his own Dr. Boom, but the double kill command pickup will not matter anyways.
Yeah. Again, no counter spell. We've already established that. So
no. What if Orange
ping the web spinner?
Ping the webs?
No beast. Oh
no.
That's devastating.
Yeah. There's this weird thing about Hearthstone too, where if you like play too fast and you ping with the mid, there's a chance that like you ping the minion that you just played as well. This was not the case. You pinged his Dr. Boom instead. But it's like I've seen it where like people target their APM is too quick and the game animation gets in their own way of the minion that's hitting the board and they ping their own minion that they just played.
It's also possible, as you pointed out, he's playing from China. He may be playing from mobile or from a tablet.
Yeah,
which
that is also true.
In itself makes life a little bit more difficult. But there you go, double kill command takes it. Oh boy. I'd forgotten that the spectral spiders aren't beasts for a moment there until you said, yeah, what if he pings the web spinner? And that game could have gone quite differently.
Yeah.
It still would have been tough for Orange.
It would have been tough, but there was still like this weird line of out. And then there's like, you know, Mage could get Unstable Portal and then get something that heals them. You know, you don't know exactly what they could have pulled, but they could have done something. And then Saiyan would have been locked out. But now Saiyan wins a very clean 3-0 over Orange, and I think he's on the board. Both these players were 0-1, I believe, heading into week 2. And I think because they're in China, we might not be able to get an interview. We'll find out if that's the case. I do want to say that I feel like Orange lineup had potential, but they definitely came up a little bit short. Just, you know, a little too much. Good start from Saiyan combined with his draws being slightly awkward here.
Yeah, and again, I'm just surprised to see these players bringing Oil Rogue. Again, Orange struggled with it, Ant struggled with it. It just doesn't seem like a good deck now that Blade Flurry has been nerfed. And you're right, they both had one. They were both 0-1 before. Saiyan just took his first win on the board. Orange now 0-2, not looking too good.
Yeah, do you want to clarify that Saiyan is not in China? It's Orange that's in China. Sixo is also in China as well. We're going to be casting his match against Lei coming up here. What was that, Falcone? You want to say?
No, I was just saying the score. Mm-hmm. Orange is now 0-2. As you said before, they were 0-1 before Saiyan got his second win. He's looking like, his first win. He's looking like he's in a much better position. Yeah,
well, I think that we might just be rolling straight into our next match, or unless, are we taking a break? Okay, we're just rolling into the next match here, and that'll be the last match of the day. But just do some house cleaning for you guys. There's a $10,000 prize pool, $10,500 prize pool, where first place gets $3,500. It's over the course of 6 weeks as well. So this week, May 30th, June 6th, and June 13th, rolling into the June 20th final. So every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, here at twitch.tv/tempo_storm is going to be the place where you guys can watch History of Hearthstone. And if you guys like this competition as well, it's really important from the organizers' perspectives that you guys can just follow the channel. If you hit the follow button, it'll do a lot of wonders essentially to help the channel grow. And then also thank anybody that sponsored us as well, like NVIDIA. So if you guys feeling generous, you can follow the channel, tweet on social media thanking Tempo Storm and NVIDIA for some nice free content for you guys to enjoy. A trip down memory lane.
Yeah, I mean, tournaments like this don't come around very often. It's a really nice initiative, and yeah, I agree, Fred. I encourage everyone in Twitch chat to hit that follow button and allow us to do more things like this.
So coming up next, we have Zlay, who was in the chat earlier, watching and enjoying the broadcast, up against Sixo, and we see very similar to the 6 or so classes that we've been seeing before: Warlock, Paladin, Hunter, Mage, up against Priest, Paladin, Warlock, Mage. So Priest being the difference maker here. No Rogue, no Warrior, definitely no Druid, no Shaman. Is there another class that we're missing that we haven't seen yet?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. No, I think we've seen most classes.
Yeah. So Zlay is getting his Paladin ban, and Zlay's banning the Warlock. So
Paladin and Warlock bans seem very familiar recently, both in this history meta and the current Hearthstone meta.
Well, it's interesting because they have fairly similar lineups, but they ban different things, and it could just be an ideology on what's the best deck, period, because it is Conquest. So Sixo can just be like, well, Paladin's just the best deck, so I ban it. And then Zlay can just be like, well, Warlock's good against my lineup. So I don't think Warlock's the best deck, but it's hard to say, because I mean, it's so long ago, and two, things change when you account for like the nerfs and the balance patches.
But Warlock's also very difficult to play against in a tournament setting, especially a closed deckless tournament setting.
Right.
Because of the whole, is it Zoo? Is it Handlock? How do I mulligan for this game? So that's one reason I don't mind the Warlock ban so much.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something that Neriah brought up very early on in his interview. He was saying that Warlock has so many different builds that you can't account for. Same thing with other classes as well. I do think Warlock is the most versatile class in this format. I don't know if there's another class that keeps up with that. Maybe Mage. There's like Freeze Mage.
That's true. That's true.
Mech Mage. There's Mill Mage. There's Giants Mage.
Because that was the thing about Druid and Paladin, right? They were incredibly strong decks, but you knew what you were queuing into when you faced one. It was almost always the combo Druid. Yeah, okay, Taunt Druid sort of existed, but it wasn't quite as prominent as the combo Druid. And with Mage, Freeze Mage, I think you could argue. Well, I guess it went through phases of being popular. Sometimes it was more popular, sometimes it was less popular. Sometimes depending on how many Control Warriors were around, I guess.
I think that Sixo in the head-to-head here, just trying to see like what's going to be the weak deck out here, and I wonder what if people's idea of Priest being really good is going to be the difference maker, because we did see 2 lineups with Priest take home the victory, and then we saw 1 lineup with Priest not be able to get the job done. Is it the builds? Is it perhaps the fact that the opponent started off really good draws and you can't do anything about it?
Cards like Cleric and Chow, I guess, and Dark Cultist and Deathlord did a great job back then of just preventing the aggressive decks from getting the start that they need. The more mid-rangey decks like Combo Druid did a good job against those priests, but decks like Mech Mage, I guess, and Paladin and aggressive Hunter decks struggled a little bit more. We're going to see one more time Mech Mage from Zlay starting off this series, and it's going to be mid-range Hunter from Sixo. Sixo, was this the meta in which Sixo was in his prime? think it's probably the beginning.
I
of his
don't know,
career.
actually. I think he was. I'm not exactly sure. I do know that Zalay was starting to break out around this time.
Sixo is always talking about old Sixo nowadays, and he used to be, the first player to hit legend, and he'd play so quickly in these hyper aggressive decks. So I'm not at all surprised about Sixo's lineup because of that.
Yeah, you could be right if he is indeed referring to back then when he would race the legend very quickly. But for the most part, he's going to need a little bit of help out of these pilot shredders here, because he does have the coin shredder to shredder, and without that mad scientist pickup, I think his hand was really poor. But now Zalay does have this weird dynamic of how mad scientists work. It's it's sort of like a game of chicken. Does Zalay identify himself as like the beatdown from this position where his opponent has to trade into a scientist, or does he really feel like he benefits from his secrets more than his opponent? And hypothetically, mage secrets cost more, so they should have more value. So in the head-to-head, you should have a slight edge. The only question is what secrets are in Zalay's deck, or in Sixo's deck, because he has that snake trap, which is a little bit of a mix-up from what we see from other decks.
Well, that's right. It's more predictable, I guess, for the mage, as Sixo must have known this is coming, though.
Gosh. Yeah, I think he took his chances. But, I mean, also, honestly, he doesn't have much of a choice, because his only minions in his hand are shredders, and he needs to develop minions in some.
Yep. So Zalay going to get a very quick start here, and Goblin Blast Mage. How risky, how lucky is Zalay feeling right now? Does he play the Blast Mage first, or does he trade into the Shredder and then play the Blast Mage? What do you think?
Trading to the Shredder first does increase your chances of clearing the minion, because the average stat line of a 2-mana minion nowadays is a 2/2.
Mm-hmm.
What to do?
There is the threat of the secret, I guess.
Oh yeah, the
Zalay
secret's
gonna go
also
face
big
first.
too. Freezing trap.
So now Zalay will
now he
have to
kinda
play
has
the
to,
Blast
yeah.
Mage, yeah.
The thing about Blast Mage, if it misses, which it oftentimes will leave up the Pilot Shredder.
Runs out on me.
Your
Maybe
opponent
he
just free trade into it.
Maybe he just plays both Snow Chuggers and goes face or trades. Like, is Blast Mage necessary this turn? Thinking about
That's
it.
true, because then you have Clockwork Gnome and Goblin Blast Mage to guarantee the battle cry.
Oh, this is a different line entirely. And a way for Zalay to keep head on the board. Whatever minion Sixo drops,
This
Zalay gets a
is
copy.
so smart, because it forces Sixo to be in a really poor position to not develop minions, and Hunter can't win if it's not playing minions. So it's something that we didn't consider too, that Zalay saw Sixo frantically coin out Pilot Shredder, saw that Mad Scientist was played off the top from the draw, so he could be saying Sixo is just holding another Pilot Shredder. So it just could be a read. Sixo does manage to pick up this Knife Juggler, which ends up being a blessing in disguise, because it lets his Glaive Zuka get some pretty decent value.
Yeah. And it
This is
also
where
meant
Blast
Zalay
Mage
wasn't
can
getting
hurt.
another. Yeah. It also meant Zalay wasn't getting another Shredder of his own,
Right.
which would have been a disaster for Sixo, not being able to deal with that. And you're right, Blast Mage going to come down. Oh my goodness.
Near perfect result. Juggler does not return serve on the Clockwork Gnome, and that means a free trade here for Zalay. Looks like Sixo's already kind of stressed under the gun here, because he's just falling so far behind. There's 9 power on the board. There's Time Returner, which is essentially just a youthful Brewmaster bounce. You can attack with the Goblin Blast Mage, bounce it.
Yeah, there were a lot of uses for that
this
card,
is
actually.
tough.
That's pretty nice on Antonidas in a desperate position, too. Leok, the worst one here, I would argue.
Yeah, Leok looking for some redemption after that previous game where Orange pinged his own minion, looking for some revenge, and that is not going to do it. Zalay has a secret that he has to first figure out what's going to happen, and it could be Freezing Trap, in which case Raven Familiar is very good to bounce back in that spot.
What is it with Raven Familiars and Piloted Shredders today? Sure,
I
that's at
know,
least
right? There's so many 2-mana minions, and we've seen multiple Raven Familiars here. Good point. If you expect a Freezing Trap, you attack to the face with Raven Familiar. If it's a Snake Trap, you just attack straight up with a 5/4 to the 2/4. If it's Explosive Trap, the Raven Familiar just dies.
Well, now Zalay is going to have a very good idea as to what that secret is. I guess it could be Snipe, potentially, though I don't see why Sixo would be putting that in his deck. I think it can only be Snake Trap right now, right?
Yes, it can only be Snake Trap, I believe, because a bunch of other secrets haven't been introduced.
Zalay just setting up lethal next turn.
Sixo's dead, man. He doesn't have anything to answer this board. Snowchucker keeps the bow in check. And that's going to be game one over to Mech Mage. And so now you're starting to see why Jackie and Neriah banned Mage in the very beginning of the day, because it just has so many good tools early on to stop whatever you're developing with like early tempo plays off of mech discounts and flame cannon, and then just like ways to cement that lead with Goblin Blast Mage. I would argue that Mech Mage would still be a good deck even today, especially after rotation with the Witchwood.
We've had really great performance from Mech Mage today. I believe it's gone 3-1 so far, with the only loss being that last one from Orange in the last series. It's just a solid deck. Again, Aggro Mage is still strong even now and is lacking some of the tools that it used to have. Just imagine Mech Mage with things like a Luneth and, you don't have to imagine it with Flame Waker. We've been there, but Mage, powerful class.
Well, the thing I like about Mech Mage that I liked about other Tempo Mage builds was that it had more 1-mana minions than just Mana Worm. Like, the thing about, like, Tempo Mage in every iteration after Mech Mage is that it felt like if you didn't draw Mana Worm, you didn't do anything turn 1 ever, unless you coined out a 2. And that only happens a certain percentage of the time. You actually have, like, Clockwork Gnome, and a lot of people play Cogmaster as well. So it actually gives you reliable early game. Of course, it does mean that your top end struggles a little bit more, but you still have like Antonitis and spare parts. So that's what made Mech Mage much more well-rounded. Versus these days, it feels like Tempo Mage is a little high roller. You know, it has to have that Mana Worm to start to increase its win percentage significantly, and if not, it has to have like secret tempo with like, you know, really big Sorcerer's Apprentice swings. And then if that doesn't work, then it's just like, okay, well, I'll bank on Aluneth.
As time went on as well, Mech Mage had multiple different versions of the deck available. Like, there was the Antonitis version that we've seen a lot of today, but there was also the Clockwork Knight Fel Reaver version that appeared a little bit later on, which was just, I guess, more aggressive on the board and more win by game 6 orientated. Yeah,
and that's definitely going to be the case here. But Zalay's going to turn to Warlock, picks up Doomsayer, which is super good. So Doomsayer has never been bad in almost any meta. Whoa. I think the worst it's ever been is probably when people played both Silence and Crazed Alchemist in some of their aggressive decks.
Okay, unless I'm mistaken, Bomb Lobber was never in Mech Mage.
Oh yeah, what? I actually think it might have been, but I'll have to go and check in some of these deck lists.
So I wonder what he's put that in there to tech against.
Huh.
It's good against concealed Gadgetzan Auctioneers, I guess. But we've established Rogue isn't that strong, so...
Most of the top end for Mech Mage was Azure Drake, Slotheb, Antonitis, and Dr. Boom. There was, I don't know about any versions with Bomb Lobber. I mean, some people played, like, even Flame Strike, for example, or Pilot Sky Golem.
Yeah.
But it's certainly interesting to see a Cogmaster. Zalay thinking about if he can get away with not playing Doomsayer this turn because he has Mountain Giant, so tapping for a Giant would be very good. This Mech Warper, though, is a lot of damage, and if I'm Zalay, I'm sweating a little bit for this Doomsayer.
Yeah.
Oof. And this coin Annoyatron also means that Doomsayer is officially shut off. He just dies to the board. Although he could just Doomsayer for the life game.
I really don't mind that. It's not like he's got anything better this turn. I don't think he can afford to life tap. Then again, he could life tap and try and dig for Melganis, play Void Caller next turn, and use that as his comeback mechanic.
The only thing about that is the board's too big at this point.
Yeah. He's in a tough spot. I do like the Doomsayer here.
Nice thing is that Doomsayer buys life, and then you can Hellfire and then start your plays that from the next turn.
Yeah.
It does mean that Mountain Giant will be stuck at 6 mana, assuming you play 1 card per turn, so you can't ever squeeze it in efficiently. But you have Lotheb, you have Antique Healbot, those are ways that you can potentially stall and force your opponent to slow down just a little bit, so that way you can play some of these bigger threats.
The other good thing about the Doomsayer this turn is that it should force out the ping from Sixo. I don't believe many mech mages run arcane missiles along with frostbolts and fireballs. So ping means that Sixo won't be able to develop further, though he has now drawn Clockwork Gnome.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter that much because it's still Hellfire. So Sixo kind of weighing if he wants the spare part, or if he just wants the tempo and the spare part, or if he just wants to hold on to it for the guarantee. But in the event that his opponent doesn't have Hellfire, he's got more damage on the board, so I vote for that.
Anoyatron survives anyway. Tinkertown Technician will be playable next turn, and then Sixo curves into Lotheb, so he's still in a fine spot here. Emergency Coolant will be great against a giant later down the line.
Time Rewinder. So another potential Battlecry value. You could Lotheb, attack Time Rewinder it. Same thing with Bomb Lobber. There's a lot of good Battlecry targets in Sixo's deck. Lotheb seems pretty strong here. It does force your opponent to play a little bit more honestly with Lothebs, as opposed to just fireball and push damage, which is what they tend to do.
That's true. The only problem is if Zalay plays Lotheb, I think Sixo can just get away with playing his Lotheb and hitting the face because he's got Anoyatron defending him.
I forgot about that dynamic, like Lotheb, your opponent's Lotheb.
yeah. Zalay won't know this, but we can see there's Bomb Lobber sitting there in the hand as well, which would have allowed for a nice trade into Zalay's Lotheb with the Anoyatron.
Holy crap, this Bomb Lobber's so scary because if it pulls out Mal'Ganis, you're just like, oh, what did I do? But in this case, it ends up being like amazing.
Successful mind games there from Zalay.
Successful, but still needs something. He could play Lotheb to his opponent's board right back, and then shut off Fireball for a turn. Maybe use his heal bot afterwards.
If he doesn't play Lotheb, there's a high chance that Zalay has lethal in Zalay's eyes. Just Fireball is all it would take.
Right. So if you play Lotheb, your opponent has 9 damage on board. You can play Molten Giant for free next turn and on TKO bot. And if you draw the Sunfree Protector, you basically fired on all cylinders, which is pretty huge. Is there another line that Zalay is looking at right here, though, that could potentially be even better than what he's seeing? I don't know if I want to test my luck with, like, Sylvanas or a giant here.
His options are play a big thing or play Lotheb, basically. I'm considering Sylvanas a big thing here because it would require Sixo to trade in both minions anyway. He's going to go with the Lotheb, which is the safer play, but Zalay is really going to struggle to win the game from this point.
The emergency coolant also is like a really funny thing here because it ends up being really powerful for like what Sixo wants to do, but it's too expensive.
Yeah, just freezing the Void Caller and potentially preventing Mal'Ganis for another turn is something to consider. But as you said, it would use up all of Zixo's mana right now.
So just going to go ahead and take the damage while he can.
Yeah.
So looking for a demon or Sunfree Protector.
Zombie Chow not looking so hot here. 0 mana Molten Giant is good if Zalay can stabilize. He can play that with the heal bot, trade away some of Zixo's minions, but the fact that Zalay still hasn't drawn a demon is catastrophic for him.
So many possibilities.
You could tap for a demon.
He might have to.
No, because then he can't coil anymore. I think he just has to accept the fact that Void Caller's not pulling anything. Void Caller, trade Mortal Coil, evaluate your play, Molten Giant, and TK.
Yep.
Would you train to the mech? Or would you train to the 5/5? 1 less damage?
Oh, that's a good question. What is the mech actually doing here? It's activating Goblin Blast Mage.
Yeah. But you have so much minions on board that I think you want to take that extra damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with this line. Also activates Tinkertown Technician, that's the other one. But chances are Sixo has another mech in hand to do that anyway. So I do agree with you. I think trading away the Lothar was slightly better.
Reversing switch gets 1 more damage for Sixo. So he's got 5 from the Mechanical Yeti. He's got 4 from Frostbolt Hero Power. So he's still 4 or 5 damage off for the next couple turns.
If Zalay draws a second antique healbot soon, then maybe he can stabilize himself in this game.
Yeah. Even just, quite honestly, if he just gets a taunt, like Defender of Argus, that might be enough to stabilize so that Sixo only can draw Fireball. Oh, 1 turn off.
That's disappointing. If it was drawn just a little bit sooner, this game may have gone quite differently. How much of this board can he actually deal with? He can trade into the 2 minions and Hellfire, but then he's putting himself down to 6. That's Fireball range. He also won't be able to play any minions if he does that.
I think that his best play might just be Sylvanas, because Hellfire puts him in similar range to then just accepting the 4 damage from the Tinkertown Technician. So you could double trade Dark Bomb Sylvanas.
Yeah.
Because you're at 5 versus 6, and I don't think that changes any math.
No, I don't think so either.
It does give you 1 less turn on the ping if they have Frostbolts. Oh, it does actually give them a weird, like, potential way if they have Frostbolt and they get +1 attack.
I have no time for games.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. And Sixo will get a spare part here when the Yeti dies. Time Rewinder not quite doing it for Sixo here. Time Rewinder with Bomb Lobber combo, though.
Yeah, this is actually kind of amusing, because then now Sixo has to really weigh, like, what he really wants to do in the situation. You could play for slightly better value, like, okay, I can kill my opponent's TQ bot with the hero power, but then I miss 1 damage. And that 1 damage might be the difference between getting your opponent down to Frostbolt range or your opponent getting an extra turn to draw Jiraxis.
I don't think Sixo had a choice here. I think he had to go face with everything, or he's just never going to get through Zalay. But this Mal'Ganis is perfectly timed.
Wow. This Mal'Ganis is perfect for the situation. Sixo going for damage to prevent a Antique Healbot life tap situation, which is what was just happened here for Zalay.
So which is better, Mal'Ganis or the Healbot? It would take Fireball Ping to deal with Mal'Ganis. Mech-Mage doesn't run Polymorph, so that's not a factor. I doubt it runs any silences.
Healbot, I think, is universally better because not only does it allow you to heal up, but it gets you this Whirling Blades attack so that you could hit 13 to face, and it sets up a 2-turn lethal. It's the same kind of it's the same play essentially, but Mal'Ganis does have some weird like polymorph potential, like Bomb Lobber.
So that's sort of a good Bomb Lobber, but Sylvanas is just gonna steal it.
Yeah, what did Sixo replace in his deck for the Bomb Lobbers? This ended up blowing up in his face, and now Zalay is up 2-0.
Good
in a
choice of
matchup
words
where
there.
I think like Sixo was most likely favored. Like I don't know exactly the percentages anymore whatsoever. I can look at the matchup chart to see what they said back.
Just dig through the archives, yeah.
Let me see while you.
It did look like Sixo was going to take that though. He got so close. He got Zalay down to 1 health. But the Healbot was a nice draw. Mal'Ganis would have saved him if not for the Healbot. So very well played, I think, from Zalay there. And he just has to win with Priest. And we've seen Priest being very successful today so far.
Yeah, Priest in general has been doing really well, but largely off the back of draws. You know, we don't have to beat around the bush. When you start off with double Northshire Cleric into the Circle of Healing with Ninja Blade Master, there's very few games you'll ever lose with that kind of start. So I think for the most part, Zalay should be in a good position, because if he doesn't beat like Mage because he gets up to a good start, like Hunter is a deck it can deal with decently well. Even Paladin in theory it should be okay against. It's like 50-50. All right, so here's the percentages.
Okay.
Mech Mage was considered a 65-35 favorite against Handlock back.
Really? Wow. Okay.
And let's see.
It was similar to Aggro Mage being a favorite against Control Lock recently, I guess. It's the same idea. Fireball is a very strong card for burn.
This matchup, mid-range Paladin up against Priest, is considered even. And I imagine that it's slightly better for Priest now because a couple cards got hit from the Paladin side, and while I don't think Priest lost anything, but it's only a couple percentage points at worst. Like, for example, Knife Chuck was a 2-2 now.
Yep. And also, again, it was mentioned earlier that the Priest is able to make a few extra tech choices based on the fact that there aren't going to be any Druids around, really. So potentially Zalae has used that fact and improved the matchup versus Paladin.
Yeah. Double Zombie Chow. Jesus Christ, I don't understand how these priests are drawing like this. This is like, I mean, you gotta feel a little bit for Sixo in this position. It's just when your opponent starts off this good, and he doesn't have anything. He has Muster for Battle on turn 3, and that's great and all. It's just super slow.
Yeah, Zalae's hand was just insane here. Deathlord being backed up by the Dark Cultist on turn 3. Valen's Chosen's looking strong too.
Yep. Zombie Chow heal is also a viable play because your hero power invalidates his weapon swing for 2 turns.
I hadn't spotted that play, but that looks good to me as well.
I can justify any of these, to be honest. I do like reducing the amount of 1/1s because even though your opponent did just use the you just used the coin, your opponent still has the threat of Quartermaster. So getting ahead of them is what's important. When you have Zombie Chow, it's not like you're in a position to push face damage very often when you can prioritize board tempo instead.
Yeah. I really don't think there's any merit to going face here. I think you're right. I think this is the best option because Zalae doesn't want to trade in the Zombie Chow and have it just die to a 1/1. So he's healing it one way or another. And Valen's Chosen, maybe a little bit wasteful this early on, doesn't put an extra minion on the board. So I did like that a lot. And now again, we're going to see the strength of the Dark Cultist. It can just trade into Shredder next turn and then probably allow the Zombie Chow to value trade with whatever pops out of it.
Oh, wow. Shrinkmeister to make the Shredder a 2/3 instead for an overtrade. Or a value trade, rather.
Now you're talking.
Because then it actually kind of functions pretty similar to Valen's Chosen. The idea of Valen's Chosen is to help you get some board leverage by utilizing the +4 health. And this is kind of similar to that. Shrinkmeister, hero power. I guess the only question is if you want to play like Deathlord, trade in the Dark Cultist, but it's just so mana efficient, and this sets up your plays to be better even the next one as well.
Oh, Nerubian Egg. Okay. So typically this Paladin deck doesn't run Blessing of Kings. However, Sixo does have the Coghammer in his hand, so he's able to give the egg Taunt and force Zalae to trade into it.
Yeah, what the heck? Oh man, that is one juicy Cabal Shadow Priest target. Oh my goodness. 1 turn away though. Zalae's on 5 mana.
Yeah. One thing that's not going to work in Zalae's favor in this matchup is the fear of equality against his Deathlord. These Paladins do often run at least 1 copy of Equality, and Equality hitting the Deathlord and then Deathlord summoning Tyrion for Sixo is something that could happen.
Yeah. It's exactly how you lose.
So Zalae in a tougher spot now. It's crazy how good that egg ended up being. Just gonna ignore it for now.
Yeah, I don't think there's any much of a rush here on Zalae's end. Sylvanas provides some really good logistical nightmares for Zalae. But Sylvanas can't actually die either, so Zalae might be able to take his time and then set up for a good boom on the backswing.
Zalae could play Holy Nova, trade both 2 attack minions into the egg, and then trade Cultist into Sylvanas, which would switch the Deathlord over to Zixo's side. The only problem with that is that he ends up with no minions, and Sixo has minions. But then on the plus side, Sixo has the Death Lord, and Zalae's going to be getting the minion from it. That's an option. The rest of Zalae's hand is looking really messy, though. Sylvanas is such a powerful card.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the best play here on behalf of Zalae as well, and this is a tough one. I'd like to think that you, for one, will leave it the Death Lord as a 2/6. Actually, I don't know. This is tough. I think we just ignore the Sylvanas, let it take its trade, and deal with it afterwards. Definitely want to heal up the Death Lord though, for sure. And then go phase. I don't know if Zalae in his mind found the best play because he's out of time, but like this one was a really tough one to map out because you also are worried about your opponent just pressing his Dr. Boom in. And if he leans into that Dr. Boom, you're way too far behind.
Yeah. Like you said, Sylvanas created this logistical nightmare. And Belcher is a powerful card that Sixo got from that. On the flip side, Holy Nova is still looking strong.
Yeah, the problem too with double Dark Cult is that they feed into each other as well, making your board more sticky, which means that Sylvanas is more likely to steal something. It's not a bad draw.
No.
And honestly, it might be the ideal draw for this scenario because then he clears almost everything except for Sylvanas itself, and Sylvanas has to trade into something to steal it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So if you Shadow Pain and Belcher double trade Holy Nova, you clear off most things. You do end up healing your minions, which is like a weird thing that you don't want to do. You actually
weird drawback. Yeah, he ends up with both minions alive, so Sylvanas will be stealing something.
Yeah, most likely the Dark Cultist.
Yeah. Sixo has found himself being quite ahead now. He's got a quality and lay on hands to back him up later on if he needs them. Dr. Boom is just a solid card to play whenever he wants to put something big on the board.
I mean, if the Sylvanas wasn't there, I think you play a Boom 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually fairly clever as well. So Zalae wants his opponent to steal the Zombie Chow that gets buffed by the Dark Cultist, and I'm pretty sure the Death Rattle triggers will be just in order like usual. So Dark Cultist will buff the Zombie Chow beforehand, unless this is the second Dark Cultist that he developed into Sylvanas. Do you remember? Did you keep track?
I have to admit, I have no idea which is which.
Okay.
I wonder if the players know. I would imagine Zalae does.
Ooh, this is very cute as well. Healing Sylvanas, because it looks like Zalae is setting up for something, and it ends up improving his hand significantly. I like this a lot, actually. This is very clever by Sixo.
Sixo picks up a Lotheb, which he can play with True Silver Champion next turn as well. To, I think, almost guarantee a 2-turn lethal. If Zalae Shadow Word Death Sylvanas, he still loses the Chow.
The Northshire Cleric Holy Nova is definitely interesting. Chow's at 6 life total. Is that what it is? So, or it got double buffed by the Dark Cultist. So Zalae can Northshire heal the Chow and then Holy Nova for maximum card draw. So, and Sylvanas still can't kill herself, which is kind of the important thing.
Alternatively, he could play Valen's Chosen on the Chow, Holy Nova to deal 3 damage to all minions, and then just trade the Chow into Sylvanas. Sylvanas still steals the Chow, but it only ends up with 2 health.
Oh, okay. That's not bad either, actually.
Little extra bonus that Valen's Chosen has of the spell damage.
Well, it also heals from the Holy Nova.
Oh no, of course.
So that actually puts it out of range. So
I
you
was
have
only
to death
thinking
it.
about the spell damage.
That would death it, unfortunately.
That's bad. Yeah.
So I think if that wasn't the case, it's like one of those weird things. Again, you don't actually want like the heal effects a lot of times.
Sylvanas has been on the board for almost this entire game now.
I'm actually slightly baffled that Priest was able to generate this much damage just from like natural collateral damage. With what
Yeah.
happens to that, or splash damage rather, from fighting over the boys so much.
Well, it's looking like it's gonna have to be Sludge Belcher this turn for Zalay if he wants to survive. It's not lethal on board, but the chances of Sixo having at least 2 damage in hand are pretty high at this point. I guess he could hero power with Dr. Boom and potentially survive.
Yeah, Boom's actually kind of interesting in this spot because now you're like, first of all, you are worried about dying. That is like the big thing. But let's say you don't die. How does your opponent trade into your board? He would, like, what does he do? I don't know actually.
Trade
It
into
looks
the
like he doesn't want to even bother to think about it.
Yeah, this is just a much safer play. However, the quality consecration and then the second consecration does actually just give Sixo lethal. So he's going to take his first game of the series. The beginnings of a comeback. Yeah.
Very important one because it was considered even. And looking at how mid-range Hunter stacks, it should do decently against Priest as well. So that leaves the question if Mech Mage can take down Priest. And according to this, Mech Mage is unfavored. Based off the spreadsheet that I'm looking at.
Really? Okay.
It's considered slight underdog to Priest control. It's very slight though. It's not a difference maker of, you know, becoming a hugely unfavorable.
So Zalay's still in a very good spot with his 2-1 lead here, just needing to get the 1 win against one of Zixo's decks. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Sixo, especially if I wonder what makes the Priest favored. I guess Holy Nova is okay.
Mage?
Against Mech Mage, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me look at that real quick. Let me see if there's an explanation for perhaps why it is.
I mean, Cleric on 1 is obviously pretty good. Deathlord is okay. A lot of the Mech Mage minions are quite small, so Deathlord's not often gonna fetch anything too big. There's just Dr. Boom and Antonidas potentially, but a lot of the mechs are 1 or 2 mana minions. Felon's Chosen plus Holy Nova is a very nice 3 damage.
It's because Priest, injured Blade Master, can fight really well against the board. And
sure.
Light Bomb is an actual way to answer Boom setup really well. And then Akanai Soul Priest and Circle of Healing clears almost everything to start off with.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So that, I guess why. I mean, I'm just reading the deck descriptions on why they feel like it's pretty decent against aggressive options.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to Hunter. This one is slightly Hunter favorite, I believe. We'll see if the Hunter's early game start will be too much for this Northshire Cleric. And Sixo already kind of in an awkward spot because Glavezuka Mad Scientist is great if he's on the play. Web Spinner is normally a fantastic draw. Definitely a little awkward to say the least here. But
one thing I've noticed is that Priests are consistently struggling for 2-drops. Like Shrinkmeister is about the best it gets.
There's in the classic set, there's not really good 2-mana minions, and it's not like Next Ram is introduced very much at all to the expansions. Every class got 1 card. So yeah, Priests started playing 2-drops at GVG. Everything else then was just kind of relying on coin or just hero power pass. I mean, there's a reason why that was quite the meme, but it really wasn't a meme. It was actually quite serious. Yeah, Deathlord, very vulnerable to Deadly Shot, but most mid-range hunters usually play that as a 1-of at best. So Sixo ends up passing, Zalay nodding.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward for Sixo here. There's a good chance that that's a freezing trap. So I guess the Deathlord's not going to do all that much except defend Zalay. But now we see the Shrinkmeister Cabal Shadow Priest combo present in Zalay's hand. I wonder what the good targets are in Hunter for that combo. A lot of the Hunter minions have too much attack, like Savannah Highmane, Ragnaros, etc.
Right. There's like small beasts that you can take. Let's say like Misha off Animal Companion, that's pretty decent. But for the most part, you're right. There's just not a lot of good stuff to steal off the top of the head, at least. Maybe Pilot Shredder. But
oh yeah.
Is their opponent going to be playing Pilot Shredder on turn 8 and keeping it alive as most of the time? Probably not. Soleil also really wants to shut off Houndmaster. That's like a big thing he wants to do, but he doesn't want to activate this freezing trap. And he also knows Sixo plays Snake Trap. Is Snake Trap a problem too? Because Snake Trap also sets him up in a lose-lose situation.
Good old playing around Hunter Secrets and having no idea which one it is. Tough position to be in.
Oh, I like this. This is a setup for Holy Nova. So he puts up Valen's Chosen. So even if Sixo plays Houndmaster, he just gets Holy Nova straight through.
That's really nice.
Really clever setup here by Zalae. And also, he doesn't attach it to the Death Lord in case his opponent has Hunter's Mark.
Yep. It also allows Zalae to next turn test for both Freezing Trap and Snake Trap by attacking the Death Lord into the Web Spinner. Or into any of the minions, because then if the snakes spawn, then it's fine. Holy Nova's going to deal with everything. It does run the risk of his opponent getting a Savannah Highmane or something from the Death Lord.
Yeah. Or does it though? Because now if he attacks into the 3/1, oh, actually, here's another problem though. If he attacks into it and it's not Snake Trap, like let's say, okay, so if he attacks into the minion and it's Snake Trap, he can clear with Holy Nova.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, and it's just Freezing Trap, then he.
I don't think it's that bad.
Oh,
if
actually,
that happens,
yeah,
though.
it's okay. It's okay. The only problem, I guess, would be if it is Snake Trap.
Snake Trap is worst case, and even then, only if the Death Lord summons something huge for Sixo.
Right. Apologies for the mild confusion there. Also have to worry about what comes out the Death Lord side, because the Highmane coming out means that all of this kind of gets thrown out the window.
Okay, so you're going to Holy Nova first to avoid that from happening.
Yes, it's the absolute safest option. But you can also attack face, because if it's Snake Trap, you just...
Yep.
Whatever.
And it was Snake Trap, it looks like.
Right.
So Sixo significantly behind on the board. Gonna struggle to come back from this. Again, Savannah Highmane from this Death Lord could be all he needs. But I'm not sure Mad Scientist is good enough, especially with Cabal Shadow Priest ready to just take it away. Given that Zalae now knows it's Snake Trap, he can just take it and go face.
Yeah, exactly. Seems good to me. It feels like your opponent's desperation to remove the Death Lord also kind of implies that, you know, he doesn't have Highmane in the hand.
Right.
Interesting. So he really loves the Shrinkmeister Cabal Shadow Priest, and he wants to just push the damage. The double Zombie Chow has a way to stop all your momentum. So if Zalae loses board and Sixo is able to strike back and gain back life, then Ragnaros and Lothep will carry the game. Ooh, that could be a potential important outcome here. Let's find out what comes out of the Web Spinner.
Violet Worm, okay.
I mean,
the only issue is it doesn't do anything the turn it's played. On the plus side for Sixo, Zalae's going to have a real hard time clearing that. After the Shadow Wear Death, it's just a board full of 1/1s.
Cabal Shadow Priest is your best setup against Dr. Boom as well. You're coming up on your opponent's turn 7. He's been playing very awkwardly. Like, he's been playing from the left side of his hand, or the right side of his hand the entire game so far. Been holding a few cards for a while. He has 2 Web Spinner cards that you can't really account for. This seems like by far and away the best play, and then you don't do anything.
Okay. Not sure why hold back the attack there. Oh no, that's a new secret, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a new secret from the Mad Scientist.
So obviously he doesn't want this 4/7 spell damage Zombie Chow being turned back into a 2/3.
Yeah. So this is like kind of the awkward thing about Sixo. He doesn't want Freezing Trap to get hit with the Knife Juggler because his life total does matter at this point. So again, he's going with a really weak play, and he's going to rely on Ragnaros to finish it up here. The funny thing is that by attacking the Cabal Shadow Priest, you can just steal the dog right back, which is like kind of funny.
Yeah, and even now, Zolay's got the combo, the Shrinkmeister Cabal Shadow Priest combo. If he doesn't want to play it again this turn to take the dog, on turn 10, he can steal pretty much whatever he wants. Also, there's a Mayexna in Zixo's hand, which is completely unplayable.
Right, Mayexna and Cabal Shadow Priest. Oh man, that was like the criticism against every card with 2 attack that was decent. Everyone's like, let me change your mind would be the first thing people post. Yeah.
And then Potion of Madness as well later on. So Shadow of Death is looking really
Shadow
good.
Of Death looks amazing. And here's another thing too. You can activate Snake Trap and then Holy Nova, draw a card. You can 1/2 into the 1/1, and then play Cleric and Holy Nova, draw a card, hit for 3, push 7 damage. I mean, Zolay really doesn't need the extra card, and nor does he actually need to do anything because he's just in such a dominant position. He's just holding back his cards just in case, and then he has the ability to Shrink Master Cabal Shadow Priest next turn. Pilot Shredder gets played! How often does this happen? It doesn't happen very often, and it's going to happen exactly this game.
You did say that, and here it is.
What on earth?
It's a casting curse for you.
GG. Sixo can't do anything at this position.
He can't get back on the board. That's one of the weaknesses to the mid-range hunter. Once it's lost its control, it's not getting it back.
Yeah, I really love the way Zolay piloted this game. Sixo had a pretty okay hand. Like, you know, sometimes actually no, not this game. The other games he had a much better hand, but Zolay was able to really dissect Sixo's options, find out what's the best way to play around the secrets, and push as much damage as possible. Really well done. And that's going to be a 3-1 victory for, you know, Mr. Forearms over there. Zolay's been working out a lot. We have him improving to a 2-0 record, I believe. I have to look at it.
Wow. And it's a pretty good position to be in. Again, Zolay, Sixo, both have been competing in tournaments recently. They've obviously been having to set aside a good amount of time to prepare for this one. And each week, it's changing so dramatically. That is a lot of preparation time needed. But if Zolay is 2-0, that's a really good accolade.
Yeah, we'll find out the actual records in just a second there, but I do want to wrap up most of the show of Naxxramas and Goblins vs. Gnomes. Is kind of a fun little trip down memory lane, considering that there are a lot of more honest board tension scenarios where like you couldn't just come back immediately with like a 1 or 2 mana card. You know, there's not like Possessed Lackey and Dark Pact or Defile or, you know, those kinds of things that just help sweep the board. You have to fight very honestly and think about things ahead of time, which is really nice. But then you also remember the Pilot Shredder, the Dr. Boom, the Mech Mage stars, and so maybe you're not as nostalgic as the rest of us. Zolay's joined with us for a brief interview and a couple words on his victory. So Zolay, how are you enjoying this format? You look like you're having a lot of fun.
I love it so much. I actually play tested for this tournament just because it was fun, not because it was like a good use of time.
That's great, man. Who'd you play test with?
Practiced some with Gallon and Ike. I feel like their input these past 2 weeks really helped me improve my lineup, gave me some advantages over my opponents. So shout out to those guys.
Nice.
So Zolay, do you think you're going to enjoy the tournament less as time goes on, as more expansions come in and as it becomes more, I guess, of modern Hearthstone? Or do you think you're going to enjoy that more? Do you prefer the new cards to the GBG and Naxxramas stuff?
Well, I'm definitely getting like a huge blast of nostalgia playing with these old cards, but I don't know that I'll enjoy it any less going forward because I'm still new to Wild, and anything that's new, there's a lot to learn, and learning is fun. So like, I've been having a ton of fun. Like, this is actually just my favorite tournament ever. Thank you, Doug, for setting it up, and
wow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Do you think it plays particular to the strengths that you have as a Hearthstone player, like playing in an adapting format like this over the course of weeks?
Yeah, I do. I think I typically do pretty well at these things where people don't have a lot of time to prepare, and it's kind of like relying a lot on past experience and intuition and that sort of thing. You know, I've played Magic before Hearthstone, so I've been building decks for a long time.
That's right. That's right. Does it feel extra nostalgic because this was around the time that you started having your breakout performances? I think this was around this period specifically is when you converted from Magic Online to Hearthstone, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when, but I know I played a lot with these cards, and playing with them again, I'm like, wow, I really miss this. This is great. This is good stuff. Except for when Sixo has a Sylvanas, then I don't like it as much.
Good stuff, Soleil. Are you going to be streaming after this then at all?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next thing I'm doing.
All right, guys. So make sure to check out Soleil's stream. Congrats on your victory, and we'll see you back next week for more History of Hearthstone.
Thanks.
All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of Week 2. Curse of Naxxramas and Goblins of Snow have cemented their place in this format. Week 3, we introduced Blackrock Mountain featuring Emperor Thorzan, Patron Warrior, Dragons into the mix. So maybe we'll see a little bit of the Dragon Priest, Dragon Warrior come out. And we have the Grand Tournament appearance with Inspired Mechanics, Secret Paladin, Nagasiwich gets introduced. They nerfed it just in time for this tournament. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Thank you.
So convenient. The Molten Giant.
Yeah, the Molten. Oh, man. Imagine if that was the case. But it does change significantly. Shaman also gets a pretty decent amount of cards as well. I believe Totem Golem and Thunderbolt Valiant are in the mix for TGG.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
If you're sad that Shaman didn't make an appearance this week, don't worry. I'm pretty sure next week it has a case. Here is the standings, and look who is on top. Of course, people know Zalay and Neriah, great players. They're all tied for first effectively, but look at the tiebreaker going to Dane. Tie with Zalay. You gotta love to see that, man. Dane coming in here, wild expert, doing well.
It is great. And like I said originally, I'm not surprised at all that Dane is performing well. I feel as though it's very much his territory. I'm a little bit surprised to see Jackie Chan near the bottom of the leaderboard. I think that's something that might change in the next few weeks as more cards get introduced, as there's the potential of more creativity and more varied deck lists. I think Jackie Chan's really going to get the chance to shine. But yeah, all in all, these are 8 great players, and so whoever wins and whoever loses, it can't be a big surprise. They're all good.
Yeah, you can't really be disappointed or unhappy with any of the results. I guess unless your favorite player is only one of the players, you don't like the other 7. But yeah, we're here to have a good time, to have nostalgia, play fun decks, kind of remind us where we came from Hearthstone, and also just to kind of inspire you guys to maybe try out different stuff in Hearthstone. Like Wild does have access to all these cards. So if you guys really appreciate like that, you can go ahead and dip into Wild. And the nice thing about that format is, as far as I know, is that there are so many viable decks for all the classes that you can explore that. So say you want to play Mech Mage, you can totally do that in Wild, and I'm sure you can easily get to rank 5 or Legend based on how you optimize it. Falcone, that's it for this week. Thanks for jumping on and casting. Do you have any final words to wrap up the show with us?
No problem at all. It's been an absolute blast from the past, as Zalay said. Once again, I'd encourage everyone who's watching, if you enjoyed the show, to follow the Twitch channel so that we can do more stuff like this in the future. But yeah, thanks for it, Dan. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Big shout out to NVIDIA for helping us put on this broadcast, and a shout out to all the Temple Storm guys who helped organize it. It's pretty much passion that really drives this project, guys. So any kind of follow on the channel, like Falcone mentioned, tweeting at Temple Storm and NVIDIA esports to get them at least in the conversation, know that we're engaging, goes a long way for your guys' entertainment. So there's a couple thousand of you guys in the stream watching. If you just take a few seconds of your day to do that, that goes so much and so far for the community. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Get those likes, get those retweets, get those comments going. Until then, this has been Frode and Falcone with History of Hearthstone. We'll see you guys back next week, 10 a.m. Pacific, here at twitch.tv/tempo_storm for more Hearthstone action. See you next time.